Someone's going to go for two and get it at some point.
It's 1:42 in the morning.
Yeah, that's all right. Number one. Shocker. Iron.
Man, give me the Trojans.
There we go. Presented by Perfection One. My name is John Bruce, along with Shayne Combs, here for episode 75 of Southern Ohio Sports Authority's flagship podcast. Got it right that time. That was like 4 weeks in. I've been working on it. We're getting close to tournament time. Pretty exciting time of the year. In the fall, there's so much stuff going on every week that it's hard to go over everything to catch every big game. But once it gets tournament time, it makes things a little bit easier. It's an exciting time of the year.
It really is. It gives everybody an opportunity. And, a lot of times in the fall, we say we feel like we don't get a lot of the upsets. It's a little bit more predictable than maybe some of the other times of year. But when you do come up on some of those matchups, it's really exciting. And then the brackets come out and you start peeking ahead a little bit, and you can't help but play fan a little bit. Obviously, coaches, they cannot do that, and they certainly don't want their athletes doing that. But as fans, you kind of start to peek at the bracket a little bit, and you start to get a little bit excited about the opportunities we have for some incredible matchups here over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and sometimes you got a lot of travel time in this too. So we will be talking this week about tournament time, a lot of things in week 8 of football, getting ready for the state tournament and a couple of different things, and also talking about the playoffs. But while you're here, we appreciate you tuning in. Make sure that if you're on your actual YouTube page and not just like clicked on the link, if you're on your actual YouTube page, give us a subscribe. It helps us out. And then also, if you enable notifications, it's a really good thing as well, because then you'll find out when all of our shows go live. This one will come out Monday morning about 9 a.m. So typically, obviously, if you're watching now, you already know it. But that way, next week, maybe you forget, 9 a.m. comes around on Monday, you get the notification, and then you can watch us whenever. There'll be timestamps below, as always, to make sure that if you're a soccer fan, you can go right to soccer. You can skip the other stuff if you want. You'll know what we talked about when we talked about it as well. So all that is available. It's a great time of the year. I'm going to throw a couple things at you here. We've been starting our shows with some discussion, um, in just different ways. You were a longtime coach. I was a longtime assistant of how to get ready for the tournament. We have volleyball and soccer and cross country all starting this week. If you're watching this past Monday night, some teams have already been eliminated in volleyball and soccer. So football closing in. With preparations for the tournament, how did you go about preparing each game? It's one and done time. It's not just we're playing to get better each week. Now you're playing to win in advance. So how did you look at it differently as a coach for preparations?
Honestly, John, I think as you got in the second season, you hope you're healthy. Okay,
Hmm.
the physical health, you certainly can do things to monitor that throughout the year. Obviously, training. We heard right here from Dr. Haynes the other night, and I thought that was a great interview.
Hmm.
There are things you can do to prevent the injury. Some are not
Right.
preventable. So you hope you get some good fortune there, especially if you're in a small school setting, because as we said before, there may not be a next man up or a
Mhm.
next, young lady up to take the place of the person that you just lost. Maybe at a bigger school, you do have a similar type of athlete or whatever. A lot of
Mhm.
times, a small school, that's not available.
Right.
So the first thing is you kind of cross your fingers, prepare as hard as you can to be physically healthy. All that aside, I always felt like the number one job that I had as a coach is the mindset. I wanted my teams in a really confident mindset going into the postseason. If we were really, really good, I didn't want us to shy away from the expectation. So like if we had a team that was a top seed and we were going in, I wanted them to accept the bullseye. I wanted them to accept that. Don't be scared of the moment. Welcome the moment.
Mhm.
Prepare yourself for the moment. Now, oftentimes we found ourselves in position like at Payne Valley where we were way better than our record said we might have
Mhm.
been. and I needed to check the confidence of my kids. It was the other way around. You know what I mean? Like I wanted them to go in and believe that we could do it, no matter what our record said, and no matter what the record of the opponent said. I wanted them to believe that if we go in and do this, 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 and this, we can go. So I think year in, year out, do you have an experienced team? Do you have a younger team? Have they been through this before? Have they not been through this before? Every team's different, but I think some of those foundation pieces were really important to me, and mindset was a really big deal for me in terms of where I thought my kids were at mentally heading into the tournament.
Speaking of mentally, when you're getting prepared for an opponent, if you were, let's say, if you were a favorite, how much did you value the short term? Because I mean, some of these, I talked to the Wheelersburg soccer, they're not playing for an extra week after the tournament starts. So, as a favorite, do you like having that extra time because it can help a lot with health? But at the same time, as an underdog, would you prepare or would you prefer the longer time off so you can get as prepared as possible?
Well, I think a lot of times sport to sport, it's different. You know, I
Mm,
mean, conditioning of that particular sport, like I imagine in soccer, conditioning would be a big concern.
mhm,
In football, you probably welcome the rest from physicality, and it's
mm,
probably not that much of a rhythm problem just to take 1 week off.
mhm,
Um, in basketball, you worry about conditioning, you worry about rhythm though, first quarter coming out and being out of rhythm a little
mhm,
bit. Baseball, a lot of times it was getting live at bats. You try to
mhm,
bring people in and make sure you certainly didn't want to go 8, 9, 10 days and not, be in the batter's box against an 80-mile-per-hour fastball. I mean,
mhm.
you wanted to have some live look. So again, knowing your team, knowing what their makeup is, knowing what their needs are, and then trying to put yourself into that place. Then from a strategic standpoint, maybe depending on the sport, maybe there is something you try to add to your team. Maybe there is something that you try to maybe have in your back pocket to feel like, hey, we're a little bit better, we're a little bit more advanced, we're a little bit. If we do get in this situation, we have a counter, we have
Mm.
something. So again, all of those things play a role, and I guess it does come back to the mental mindset of where they're at and what you want them to be prepared to do.
And then kind of the last thing. Now, this doesn't go for football because your roster's your roster. But how would you have changed your roster? Like maybe is it a time to reward some of those younger kids with a chance? But at the same time, do you have to look at mentally, are they prepared to be as focused as possible to help the varsity make that deep tournament run? Because I know I was a part of a JV team that may have been more talented at certain positions than what the varsity team was, and getting to coach, getting ready. The JV kids were fully bought into, hey, we're going to help this team get back to the convo,
Mhm.
and by being you know, a very good practice team, it really was better than what they saw in the tournament. Is that something that you may have looked at, and maybe you have some kids that maybe they're not mentally prepared to help the older kids get mentally prepared?
It's the as you started to ask that question, I started to think of one of the dynamic shifts in high school sports over the last probably 20 years. I'd say over the second half of my coaching career, we're almost in a time period now where the words junior varsity is
Mm,
almost like a curse word that should be beeped out here on
right.
the air or whatever. You know what I mean? Like no one wants to
Mm,
play the game. I want to play varsity. I'm,
yeah.
I'm an varsity. You know what I mean? And so you do battle that a little bit in terms of keeping kids interested in the program, keep them moving forward. And as you get to the end of the year, a lot of times are they able? You'll hear me talk about this a little bit with a couple of football teams later on as we get into this. But a lot of times when you're able to sprinkle in a really talented young kid with a lot of experience and they can do a specific thing they're really good at, you can almost hide their weaknesses
Mhm,
and you can set them up for early success and make your team better all in one. Other times, what you see, is when you have to put kids into situations they're not ready for. And I think
right.
it's what you're talking about. It can hurt the team. Um, you lose a little bit of experience. You lose a little bit of those intangibles.
Mm,
Oftentimes, kids that have just been around the program and know,
mhm,
maybe not quite as talented, but maybe they've just been around it more and they understand how to adjust. They understand the maturity it takes
mm.
and the preparation that it takes. So you lose some of those things for sure. Let me throw this out here too. This might be something that a lot of people didn't understand. Football. I don't know how you go about this. One of the things that came on my radar late in my coaching career before I stepped away is competitive balance. When
Mhm.
you put kids on that tournament roster, just the
Yeah.
new age. I know this sounds weird, but like you start putting them on the tournament roster, and all of a sudden you start to count those
Mm.
kids a little
Yeah.
differently, and it can cost you going from a D5 compared to a D6, a D6 compared to a D7. That's something I've watched 4 or 5 programs. I'm obviously not going to say them on the air, but I've seen 4 or 5 programs now across our area where it feels like to me their head coach and their AD aren't working very well together on the
Mhm.
competitive balance
Yeah.
number, and it's costing them.
Mhm. Now I'll use if we go to volleyball, that's where you can look at a school like the Uniota girls. They have been they're pretty much comfortably in that Division 3 at this point, so it doesn't really
It
matter
doesn't matter.
where they're
Yeah.
going on that, but I could see where if they were closer to that D3, D4, maybe they're not bringing up as many kids, and where they're one of their big benefits for them is that they've been able to play so many kids, and you're getting the best out of each one of those kids at their certain position. Where there's some schools where I've seen they don't have very many kids even on the roster, even though the school's a little bit bigger. But I think that's
Mhm.
because they're right on that line between a certain division. I didn't even think about that until you just
Well, how,
mentioned
how
it.
many times have you looked? Because I know you follow this and do a great job of really knowing this stuff when we talk about it. You even open my eyes to a lot of things. How many times you look at a team from, say, fall to the winter to the spring, and you're like, how's that team D6 instead of
Mhm,
D7? How's that team D5 and not D6? A lot of times, if you look, they're right on the line, and a lot of times it's a competitive
mhm,
balance number. And sometimes a competitive balance number is what it is. Sometimes it's a logistical error in terms of just how you enter your
yeah,
roster and how you take a look at who's on your freshman or JV team compared to that tournament roster
mhm,
in certain sports. Where again, now football that would be a little bit of an interesting dynamic because Eh, again, I'm speaking way out of turn here because I don't know. Maybe at the higher levels, when you get into the D2, maybe a
mhm,
few D3s, maybe you can narrow your postseason, dressing,
mhm.
roster for the postseason. But other than that, I mean, most of those are 9 through 12. There's your team.
Yeah, so it is something to look at. There's all kinds of different factors, and when you mentioned competitive balance, that's something that I know I didn't even think about at the
Mhm.
time, and it can really factor into a lot of how you're preparing. Now you can still bring kids up for practice and
Sure,
whatnot without having
sure.
them dress for the tournament because if they're not going to play, if the kid's not going to play, then you don't want to impact the next season by having just doing a kind gesture,
Right.
but maybe you just have them on.
That's the
Yeah,
rock and the hard place.
yeah,
Again, you've had them come along for some extra work. You've had them come along maybe for a team meal. You've had them come along, but you do have to keep your program in mind what's best for them because again, the way that competitive balance sets up, which is ironic, you know, it's this year's team that has the higher
right.
number, but it's next year's team that gets punished for it.
Mhm.
So it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's definitely something to factor in whenever you're looking at different teams, especially in these sports besides football on their postseason rosters. So we'll definitely talk about that throughout. Once we get to basketball season and then baseball season as well, I'm sure we'll hit on those same things as well because I just looked at the baseball numbers that came out, and there's some interesting numbers that are going to be sprinkling in with some teams that A made it to state and B made it very close to state. Going to make I'll just say it, Division 4. The regional is going to be crazy
Well,
next
I
year.
can tell you from experience that throughout 30-year career at a fairly small school, we back in the days of the 4 divisions, we've played as the biggest Division 4 team in the state, and we've played as the smallest Division 3 team in the state. And I can tell you, there's a
Oh, yeah, my 1 year of coaching in the Southwest, we were the smallest Division 1 school in the state, and in the sectional
yeah,
final, we played the biggest school in the
yeah,
state, and there
yeah,
was just walking
yeah,
in was like,
yeah.
there's a little
Well,
difference.
the one year we're playing Newark Catholic into the ninth inning of the regional, and the other year we make the district and get rewarded with Wheelersburg.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, even though Newer Catholic one of the best programs in the
Yes.
state.
You're not seeing them until the regional.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the whole
yeah,
point of the
yeah,
difference in divisions.
yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah, so it's yeah, definitely some different things based on school sizes and whatnot. So we've got some schools that we're going to talk about when we get to tournament time, maybe being in that little bit higher area where maybe they would have preferred to have been one division lower. So we may get into that. But now we're going to jump into football. So for football this week, we had week 7. It was, a real or week 8, my bad. Week 8, we're getting close to the playoff time. A lot of things are starting to kind of, find their way when it comes to the playoff picture, and I'll go into that more. We'll have a playoff update after we review a little bit of last week. I was able to get out to a game because you guys were further south. I was able to get out to a game in Huntington Township. It was Huntington 34, Westfall 21, and that was a game that was at the half was 7-6. It was a pretty mundane first half, and I'll be honest, not real fun to watch outside. So Huntington goes 3 and out, punts. Joey Wright for Westfall on the first play from scrimmage breaks off a huge run. They score 2 plays later to go up 7-0. Huntington's Dalton Nichols has about a 75-yard kickoff return, gets tackled inside the 10. A couple plays later, Isaac Taylor scores, and it's 7-6. And like, we're gonna have pretty high scoring game, and then it just stopped. Um, Westfall ends up punting, but their punt goes down inside the 5, and Huntington just could not get out of it. They had to punt from inside their 5. They get a stop. Westfall punts it once again inside the 5. Huntington just misses a hold in the end zone. It was called at the 1, which would have been 2 points, and in reality didn't matter in the end, but, they get the 2, or they just avoid the hold. They end up punting again, and then maybe the biggest play of the half for Huntington was a outstanding interception by Frankie Hirsch in the end zone because it got them at the 20 instead. So they end up not scoring. They end up having to punt. I leave at the half, and apparently that's when everything fun happened. It got kind of crazy in that second half. Austin Hanna, our one of our writers, was there. He wrote a really good article about it. It's on the SOSA Ohio website, and Raymond Gleedle was there taking pictures. But like his pictures are
Outstanding.
just outstanding. Like we have a lot of good photographers. There's a lot of really good photographers around. I would put Raymond up near. Okay, I put Raymond at the top. So he does an outstanding job. But in that game, 34-21 win for Huntington. Huntington gets out. I believe they were up 20-7, and then Westfall scores, gets an onside kick, scores again right after they get the onside kick to go up 21-20. And then a touchdown by Isaac Taylor, or no, it was a Frankie Hirsch to Carson McNeil touchdown, gives them the lead. And then right after, Calvin Hirsch, only a freshman, gets a pick 6 for Huntington, ends up getting to 34-21 to really put the game away for the Huntsmen. In the game, Isaac Taylor had 3 rushing touchdowns. Carson McNeil had the receiving touchdown. Him and Jackson McNeil, just big athletic dudes on the outside for Huntington. Taylor ran the ball really well. Evan Thomas ran the ball well for the Huntsmen as well. But then you had the Hirsches, Frankie and Calvin, names that if you don't know them outside of the Chillicothe area, you need to get to know them because they are outstanding athletes. Frankie had 3 interceptions in the game. He also had a passing touchdown as he's the quarterback. Calvin had the 2 interceptions in the game, including that pick 6. So 5 interceptions in the game for the Huntsmen, all by the Hirsch brothers, and they are just absolutely dynamic. Frankie had a one-handed interception that was
Saw the picture.
spectacular. Yeah, spectacular picture and play, more or less. But and they've got some really talented athletes. They've got a good number of seniors, but also some really good underclassmen. The McNeils and the Hirsches are going to be back next year. Junior McDonald, who's out for the year, is one of the better athletes in the SVC. He unfortunately got hurt a couple of weeks ago. So that actually could be the thing that, if they're able to get into the playoffs or even the next 2 weeks as they're fighting for their playoff lives, is the fact that they don't have the excellent kicker in McDonald anymore. So that could make a big difference down the stretch. But right now, Huntington's sitting 12th in Region 24. That's something we'll talk about later on. If they win out, they'll be in. Even with a loss this week, there's a chance or a win this week and a loss in week 10, there's a chance they would be in. But for them to take care of business, they need to just keep winning. So a good win for them because that's a Westfall team that we've talked about throughout the season, a pretty solid team. Even though they're down their quarterback, they've done a good job throughout the year.
It's a great win for Huntington, and again, I want to go back to what I opened the show with mindset. I've been talking a little bit on different platforms about the Huntington boys programs, grades 7 through 12, over the last year or two, and how the enrollment's starting to
Mhm.
stabilize. They're starting to run some classes together. John, a lot of times what happens is at small schools, you'll get a good class here, but there's so much pressure on them to play young, and then you just
Mhm.
throw them to the wolves and they just get beat down. Or then there's another class here. They're starting to be able to run some classes together,
Mhm.
and what you get from a result of that is what you see with Huntington. They're a roster that's a little bit older. As I
Mhm.
as I count down through the roster, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's like 9 or 10 seniors, 9 or 10 juniors.
Mhm.
You look out on the field, and you've got a junior quarterback,
Mhm.
and you've got, you mentioned the senior running backs that you mentioned, and you mentioned some juniors and the McNeils. And then now, remember what I said earlier,
Yeah.
when you do throw in a McDonald, when you do throw in the younger Hirsch,
Mhm.
you're throwing them in places where you can highlight their strengths
Mhm.
and they become really important pieces and additions. You're
Mhm.
not asking them, hey, here, you go figure it out, do it all. You're plugging them in. So I love the makeup of the Huntington team. And then here's the other part. I love the direction of their scheduling. Remember what they did in
Mhm.
the non-league? They went out, they made sure they had 2 wins. They
Mhm.
almost ended up stealing a third one.
Right.
And then you absorb the Uniota Zane Trace games and you're at 3-3. Well, now in that mindset, that's an easy locker room to walk into. You know what I mean? You're,
Mhm.
you're, you're talking about a football program that hasn't won more than 5 games more than a couple times in the last 30 years, maybe the Bartholomew years, or,
It's
maybe,
5-5 all those years.
I think five and
Yeah.
five, maybe. And so you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's an easy locker room to walk in. Hey guys, we're 3-3. We've got this schedule ahead of us. We can compete in, and give them a lot of credit. The other night, is that game. I heard Coach talk about it
Coach
on the
Collinsworth.
show, where he was saying there was a couple different times where it could have went the wrong
Mhm.
way. But again, mindset. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Imagine trying to handle that adversity if you're going into the game, with one win,
Mhm.
or if you're 0-7. You know what I
Right.
mean? Much, much more difficult to do with high school kids if you've ever coached high school kids.
Mhm.
So the mindset and the culture that started to flip, all of those factors start to play a role. As for Westfall, I think they're a solid team. I think, unfortunately, they lost the quarterback. They have incredible skill kids. The one young man who stepped in at quarterback is a
Yeah.
terrific player.
Mhm.
He's doing the best he can at that position, but he's a terrific football
Right.
player. And obviously, the passing game hurt him the other night. I
Mhm.
mean, you throw 5 interceptions and
Yeah.
you're even in the game in the fourth quarter. It
Mhm.
tells you that you're a pretty good football team. It's just that's what happened the other night. So give Huntington secondary and the Hirsch brothers a lot of credit there for making those plays. But no, it's interesting. Huntington, what's that go now? Pike and Adina? Is that
Adina, then Piketon.
Adina
Yep.
then Piketon?
Yep.
Okay, so that's interesting because that week 10 matchup could be really, really intriguing because I know you'll go over this later. I assume
Mhm.
Piketon probably needs to win out as well.
Yes. Yeah, and Piketon's got at Westfall, at Huntington, so they've got a really tough
Didn't mean to
game.
jump ahead on
Yeah.
you, but I mean, I just figured that's going to collide there a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, so that can make things really interesting down the stretch for them as well. So, yeah, just an outstanding game, and to kind of put a bow on this, for Westfall, Joey Wright, 18 rushes,
Oh
224
yeah,
yards.
they have all kinds of talent.
Yeah, and a touchdown. He's had a really nice season for them, and I know he missed a game, but I think it may have been the week 3 game with Circleville. I think that may have been the game he missed, but with that game, that puts him right on the verge of 1,000 yards on the season, which would make him the 3rd SVC player to get to the 1,000-yard mark on the season, but he's been outstanding for them. Quinn Eberly, as you mentioned, he's a kid who had to step in. Really good wide receiver, stepped in at quarterback, and he's done well. He rushed for 75 yards and touchdown in that game as well. So, really good win for Huntington. Tough loss for Westfall, but for Westfall to be where they've been the last few years as a program, to be in a game it still means something in week 8 and week 9 coming up. It is a really good direction for that Westfall program.
'Cause I'm sure it stings. I mean, look, they're smart enough to look out there down the road and see the Uniota game lingering and stuff, so they really needed that one.
Mhm,
So I there's no doubt in my mind it ends up stinging.
mhm.
We'll see if they can bounce back here and get one and still have a really positive end of the season.
Yeah, I think they definitely have a chance to do so. So moving on to our streaming game of the week. This one, 7-0 against 7-0, but man, Eastern Pike for the second straight week really makes a big time statement.
The biggest thing for me that jumps out would be eye test. And what I mean by that is, John, earlier in the year, and I think you'll know what I'm talking about, we have such a large coverage area that you try to get your eyes on film or streams or get out and watch or whatever
Mhm.
because you want to see it with your own eyes. So a lot of times you're looking at scores and then you're comparing matchups and you're comparing scores, you're looking at stats, you're doing different things, and you're not sure. Just like we just talked about Huntington, I'll be honest, if I go back to the beginning of the year and I see Eastern needing, the incredible instant classic finish to beat
Mhm.
Huntington, and then, they combined for 100 points in the Memphis game,
Right.
or what,
Yeah.
90 or whatever. It was a lot of points.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, I didn't know what to expect. Then as the year goes on, though, and I started to look, I finally this week in preparation got myself locked into Eastern film, and I knew by about Tuesday what I was pretty sure I was
Mhm.
going to see come
Yeah.
Friday. It When you turn on the film, if you haven't watched Eastern play yet, at that level in their league, and probably even in maybe their early round playoff, they're at a different level up
Mhm.
front. Their offensive line, and I probably missed some. I tried to throw some down here in pregame show. I know Kate Weiss was up there, Brewer Tomlinson, Braylon Beekman, Brian Thomason, Bronson Keller, Tucker Justin. I mean, again, I'm missing some. I
Mhm.
apologize to the one or two of the young men maybe I'm missing, but like those were just some of my notes during the game that I was putting down that like their ability. There's times because the Montgomery kid's really good at running back.
Yeah.
There's times that young man's taking the ball, and he'd be the first to tell you, I bet, yeah, I run 5, 6, 7 yards. I haven't had anyone touch me yet.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's one of those where they do an absolute number up front, and their offensive line just takes the game over. And then when you throw in how talented their skill kids are, then it's a perfect recipe to go out and score 40. You
Right.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? It really is. I mean, Manley at quarterback, Eric Manley Jr., he his size, and I was dating myself because some of the younger people only remember Ben Roethlisberger maybe at the end when he couldn't.
Mhm.
You and I are old enough to remember like Ben Roethlisberger playing in the MAC and coming into the NFL. Like he was this big, strong, athletic guy. You couldn't get him to the ground. So
Mhm.
remember how he'd extend plays and he'd hold the ball real
Yeah.
strong and let him just throw you off with the
Mhm.
other. And then, I mean, this kid is dynamic. Got a 44-yard touchdown run. He threw a couple deep balls to a couple different guys. You had Webb involved, you had Kelly involved, you had Peters involved, and just his ability to extend the play. So when you take that offensive line and then you give him the ability to hold on to it an extra second or two in
Mhm.
comparison to most quarterbacks,
Mhm.
and as a defensive unit, I just don't want you to do. You try to get pressure on him. If you don't have lane integrity, he's just going to take off and go on
Mhm.
you. And even if you get to him, then you got to get him to the ground. So I
Yeah.
mean, they're really complete on the offensive side, and a lot of those linemen dominate the line of scrimmage on the defensive side. They're a good team. My chance again, eye test. My
Yeah.
my ability to actually see it, then it made a lot of sense to me. Like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, they've been outstanding throughout the year. Coach Tomlinson, he talked on the coach's call-in show kind of like what their line does, and he played division, I believe Division 2, high level Division 2 also on the offensive line, so he can
He
really
said that there at
yeah
Glenville, maybe.
yeah
Yeah.
he can really teach it. And then he had a son who's came back to help coach, who who played Division 1
Mhm.
as well on the line. So you're
Right.
getting really good experience coaching on that. And then throw in the fact they have great size. So it's not like they're trying to teach kids that don't have the size. They've got size. They're pretty nasty up front.
Mhm.
And as you mentioned with Manley, he's a bear to take down. And really, the fact that he's a bear to take down is why they beat Huntington, because on that next to last play, he was able to fight off a
They get
sack
down,
and make a
yeah.
big play, and ultimately, that's why they have this 31 game winning streak in the regular season.
Well, and look, this is an example where I think they would be really good Division 6 or 7,
Mhm.
but don't you also think, on the theme that our show started on tonight, Eastern's a great model or example for schools in terms of, in the smaller division, Eastern's made an athletic department move over the last decade to, um, for a while, they looked like they were gonna move and play the biggest schools in the
Yeah,
SOC, and people thought they lost their
yeah,
mind. Well, I thought, well, I was one of them. But then the SOC restructured a little
mhm,
bit, and slowly but surely, I think they're in a prime spot now. Eastern is an example of realignment and finding right where you need to be,
mhm,
where they're in a position where they could really run this for a while,
mhm,
because they've got some kids coming too. A couple of those offensive linemen are sophomores. They got some freshman kids that had good feet.
mhm.
Um, I'm just real intrigued by what the SOC has done, and I think what the Eastern Athletic Department has been able to do in terms of their fit in that SOC, and then what they're able to do now with their scheduling. I just think it sets up for, I'm going to highlight their volleyball team later.
Mhm.
You look at what their football team's doing. It just makes a lot of sense for where they're putting their athletes.
Yeah, they've done an outstanding job, and it's not just in football, but you've seen it in basketball,
Yeah.
you've seen it in volleyball as well.
Right.
So it's a athletic department that is performing at a very high level as
Mhm.
a whole right now in Beaver, and they've been outstanding. So before we talk about Notre Dame, we're going to talk about this week's Perfection One collision of the game, which will go to Trey Kelly of Eastern. And we talked about it in the pregame or the pre-show before we went on, was just there were so many options for this, but it's going to go to Trey Kelly gets a big sack, and it's going to be the this week's uh, Perfection One collision of the game. And remember that you can find Perfection One in Pickaway, Pike, and Ross counties, and when you meet them, you will see why they are highly recommended. So Kelly, just one of the many players that just an outstanding player for Eastern. And, you're gonna lose an outstanding quarterback in Manly, but, man, when you've got Montgomery, Webb, those guys coming back, some really highly skilled kids, whoever steps into that role for next year has to at least be feeling pretty good, because 'cause you're gonna be behind a really good offensive line as well.
That'll be the key. The fact that what they have in the trenches, it'll be an easier
Yeah,
transition for a new quarterback because of everything you just mentioned.
yeah, and then, for Notre Dame, they dropped 7-1, obviously a tough loss, but, man, they kept playing till the last whistle. What can you tell us about them? Because they've still got a lot to play for. Now they're probably out of the SOC race, but we're going to talk about the playoffs here in a few minutes. But they definitely are still in a prime position for a nice playoff run.
I was impressed with Notre Dame watching them on film coming into the week. The thing that jumps out at me is what jumps out at you with a lot of Division 7 teams, and that's the size of roster.
Mhm,
So they're a team that is they get beat up just a little bit, and you lose a little depth here, you lose a little depth over here, and then before you know it, you maybe have a few holes on the field that
mhm,
you have kids on there that maybe are, just getting their feet wet a little bit.
mhm,
I was real impressed with their skill kids. They started to get a little healthier at the quarterback position. I thought the Cat City kid was a really dynamic athlete. That they have some things they can go there. Um, they're in a unique situation where they're trying to get back to full strength going into the playoffs, and they have another tough one coming up here. But let's say they could somehow get it, go 9-1 or even 8-2. I feel like 8-2 is probably going to be good enough, and they play a home game most
mhm,
likely still. I would think they would be a very tough out in that first week of the playoffs.
mhm,
So again, they got off to a nice start. Had the interception. I should have put that kid's name down. Hiles, maybe the middle linebacker, I believe it was. Don't quote me on that. Had the interception, and they were driving, and they try about a 42-yard field goal.
Had the leg.
Had plenty of leg, just couldn't quite get it there, and it reminded me a little bit of that Zane Trace Uniota momentum from the week before. Not nearly that type of drive,
Mm,
but that early opportunity to play out in front, and then once they weren't able to get that, and Eastern kind of started to click there a little bit, it was go time. But I thought Notre Dame ran the football okay on the opening drive. I thought they went away from it a little bit, but again, I think following them throughout the year. I know you did a great description a couple weeks back on it's a team that obviously comes in and want to score the football,
right.
and so that's not really who they are. Is just to sit there and put together 15, 16
Mhm,
play drives. They're a little bit more of an explosive. Hey, let's
mhm.
go get it, and that probably played into Eastern's hands a little bit in terms of if the game was going to get higher scoring.
Yeah, for sure, and they've got a tough one this week at Sims Valley,
Yeah.
another 7-1 team. Both teams had sizable losses to Eastern. Right now, Fantastic 50 has it as a 4-point game, which is pretty much a pick 'em because it's at Sims Valley. So the winner of that game is in really good shape for a home game. Now, there's a chance at a bye with a win for Notre Dame, and then for Sims Valley, which I'll go more into. They definitely have a big time chance at a bye if they can win one of the next 2 weeks. So uh, still a lot to play for in the SOC, which we've talked about. But right now, it looks like Eastern Pike's reign over the SOC will go on for at least one more season. But they will say they got a big one this week at home for their senior night. South Gaia at home. They're pretty sizable favorites in that, but South Gaia can really put up a lot of points and almost got them last year at South Gaia before a pretty nice win for Eastern in the playoffs.
That'll be interesting because I mean the last two opponents here have come in scoring some points and they struggled to do so against
Mm,
Eastern. So another test for the Eastern defense, and it'll be interesting to see if South Guy can put something together on the offensive
mm.
side.
Yeah, and then one thing we've been doing each week, and it's not as easy every week. This week, I feel like it's pretty easy. Our team of the week is going to go to the Northwest Mohawks. They moved to 5-3 as they beat West 36-13. The first win for the Mohawks over West since 1999. I mean,
Yeah.
we've talked about them over the last couple of weeks. We've highlighted Jake Brown. I'll talk about him again here in a minute, but they're a team, and you could hear it in Coach Crabtree's voice on the coaches call-in show. I know Derek clipped it and put it on Facebook today. There's a little clip of him talking, and the whole interview is outstanding with him. It was their senior night. It was just a huge win for them. They're a team that when you get really down into it, they went down into SOC one because they were really struggling with their program, and they were able to you know put some wins together, figure some things out with their program. And since moving back up to SOC2, they have been much more competitive. They're still not to the Wheelersburg level, but right now, if they take care of things the last 2 weeks of the season and Wheelersburg beats West in week 10, which is very likely, they will tie for second in the SOC2, which is a huge accomplishment for a program that hasn't had a whole lot of success. Right now, they're on the outside looking in for the playoffs. Probably is not going to happen this year. That loss to Valley is gonna sting. And Coach Crabtree kind of mentioned that again this week on the call-in show. They're you know
Yeah, we can all relate to that as
yeah,
a
I was
coach.
like
It's just there's
yeah
some that you just they'll stay with you.
yeah, but I think this is one that will stay
Yes.
with
Yeah.
Northwest for a long time, and they are a team that we've talked about before. They have a really good offensive line, a really good defensive line. But man, when you have a quarterback like Jake Brown, you are going to have a chance every game. On Friday, he was 11 to 13 for 143 yards, 3 touchdowns. Then he ran the ball 25 times for 137 yards and another touchdown, and had an interception on defense. I mean, that's just an outstanding all around game. To me, maybe his overall numbers will be harder to justify, but I think he's the type of kid that's an all Ohio player because you hear all the different things he does. He's closing in on 1,000 yards passing. probably will get to 1,000 yards rushing in week 10. He's thrown 15 touchdowns, only one interception on the year. Also has 9 rushing touchdowns. Has not fumbled. Has 1 turnover to 24 touchdowns on the season.
Yeah.
That is exactly what you want out of your senior quarterback. And then he plays defense and does a really good job there as well. So he's the type of kid that, to me, is what an Ohioan is.
Oh, there's no question. I
Yeah.
mean, like, listen, I mean, Northwest, what they're doing, it's hard for some programs to understand the big deal that this is for the Northwest program because, as you said, they've been fighting an uphill battle. Like when I was growing up, Northwest was a much bigger school,
Mhm.
so they probably ran over their head a little bit on the football side with who they're playing against.
Mhm.
And then now you get some realignments, and you're trying to figure out who's in what half of or what third of the SOC, and there's a lot going on for Northwest to put this type of year together with who they play against, and they start to do this. We highlighted Brown last week,
Yes.
right? And we said going in, I personally picked West. I'd seen West in person and on film a couple of times. I'd seen Northwest on film probably at least a game and a half. And I'll be honest, I didn't see it coming. But I
Mhm.
think it just goes to show you that um, when it all clicks, as coach was talking about on the show, when it all comes together and you go and you make what he say a 42-yard field
Yeah.
goal when he talked about special teams, he talked about getting stops, he talked about running the ball and possessing the ball and keeping it away from them. Yeah, 1999, they beat them in 95. He said even
Yeah.
before that, you had to go back almost 30 years. He
Yeah.
said, so this doesn't happen very often, and so I'm sure it was a special night for the Northwest program and in terms of what they go, and it goes back to show you. I thought Portsmouth West was turning a corner,
Mhm.
but I think with scheduling again, sometimes a tough schedule makes you battle tested and makes you ready for down the stretch,
Mhm.
and sometimes a tough schedule will just get you beat. You just kind of well, certainly not quit on. That's the wrong term, but
Right.
it just makes it harder to keep your confidence and move
Mhm.
forward week in week out, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I think as a result, you've seen it with some programs like Waverly. You've seen it with some programs like the Paint Valley kids. You've seen it with some programs that have won over the years where they've taken on some schedules in the first 4 or 5 weeks that just kind of beat them down, and they never did recover.
Mhm.
I think with Portsmouth West, it's kind of been up again, down, and I think that kind of stuff is showing up here in the final couple weeks of the season.
Because right now, just looking at West, played 3 playoff teams coming up, and they'll play a 4th, but they're gonna play 5 really
Well,
good teams. Because
they played Hillsboro
yeah,
before Hillsboro lost some kids.
the
That Hillsboro
the
team they
yeah.
played was really good.
Yeah, the week before, like, if they could have played Hillsborough a week after that, it's probably a different
Different team,
result. Yeah,
different team.
but, overall, it's still a good team. It's just in this game, Northwest was able to get a lot of pressure on the quarterback and really make them one-dimensional because whenever they were trying to throw the ball, like an Aiden Armbrister, Ian Marshall, Carter Lute, you know, their line guys were really getting into the backfield, making big time plays.
Mhm.
And because of that, it was, causing havoc and making West really one dimensional. And because of that, they just couldn't really get going.
Yeah.
Weston Lang hit a 42-yarder, as you mentioned. Just a really big for a kid that's had kind of a tough year on the accuracy, but makes a big time kick for them there. And then I know you mentioned him last week as well, Carson Christian was unreal in this game. 18 rushes, 166 yards and a touchdown. Then he had 8 catches for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns. So 3 touchdowns, over 270 all-purpose yards or total offense for
Right.
Carson Christian. Just outstanding. So as we mentioned, probably out of playoff contention, which we'll go into that here in a minute, but we'll likely finish in second place. And for Northwest, they're a community that is very spread out. It's one of the biggest school districts in the state. So even though they are up in that Division 5, they're in a position where it's hard for them to get all of the kids out to play that they need to because how spread out they are. Because sometimes it takes kids multiple hours to get home after school. So it's hard for them to justify either staying for practice for someone to have to come pick them up or coming back for practice if
Yeah,
you're in those lower levels. So for Northwest, any of their success has been very impressive. I think Coach Crabtree and his staff have done an outstanding job.
no question.
Yeah. So moving on to not our last part of football because we are going to preview this week's streaming game, but uh, kind of get into the playoff picture a little bit. Um, just kind of gonna just go over what each who's still in it, what they need, and what maybe they are looking for. So, going to start in Division Three. In Division Three, it's going to be a um, you know there's two different regions that our teams go into. In Region 11, this one's kind of wild because Region 11 is loaded, Region 12 is loaded too. But in Region 11, Athens is likely in at 9-1. Not like a guarantee that they're in at 9-1. The positive for them is I believe from like 13 down, it's just not as strong. But the top 12 are really good in Region 11. They'll likely be on the road no matter what. Even with a 10-0 finish and a win over what would be a 9-0 Nelsonville York, they will likely be on the road. That just shows how strong Region 11 is. But right now, a win this week for Athens, and I think it's safe to say that they're going to be in.
Yeah, obviously, as you said, they're going to run the table. That's all you can really do.
Mm,
But look, again, the eye test. If that's a healthy team and they're ready to go, is that a team you want coming to visit
mm,
you in week
no.
11? No. So again, sometimes the points are what they are. Sometimes it works in your favor, sometimes they do not. You look at their schedule this year. Sometimes teams are having years that are out of your control.
Right.
I mean, they did play Logan. Logan's 0-8.
Mm.
They did play Marietta. Marietta's 1-7.
Well,
Warren's two and
yeah,
six. You know what I'm saying?
Warren
So
was a playoff team last
yeah,
year. Marietta was close to being a playoff team a year ago. I think they finished like one spot out of the playoffs. Payne Valley was a
yeah,
playoff team last
sure,
year. I think technically Logan was as well, but I mean,
right.
it's there's only so much you can do with your schedule, and then with the TVC being pretty down, besides them and Nelsonville, it ends up hurting them a lot of point wise.
Mhm.
But as you said, that's a very good team, and no matter what their record's going to be, right now 98% likely in with 9-1, which they play River Valley this week, a huge favorite over them. They're going to win that game. But then week 10 is gonna be a really fun one with Nelsonville at home at Joe Burrow Stadium. That's gonna be a game that we're not gonna be able to get to, but that's one that I believe we'll have someone there to cover it because that's
Yep.
gonna be 9-0 against 9-0.
Mm.
That one's gonna be outstanding. So moving on to Region 12, uh, we have multiple teams over in that. A lot of the FAC in there. Miami Trace, Chillicothe, Jackson are all pretty much locks, and I believe into home games more or less. Chillicothe, if they beat Jackson in week 10, would be a lock for a home game. But if they don't, then it's a little more up in the air for them. But they're probably going to be in that 8-9 range if they are unable to get that. Hillsborough needs to win out. If they get some help, they will more than likely be in that 12th spot. They're a team that was hurt through some adversity throughout the year, but they've had a nice season as well. And really, for them, it's not crazy to think that they could win their last couple of games because they're a team that, um, if you just look
Sure.
at it, um, pull it up really
Play
quick.
Washington McLean.
Yeah, Washington and McLean, it's 2 games. Washington at home, I think, benefits them in a way. At McLean, that one's the Rotary Bell or the Rotary Cup, Rotary Bell. I'm not sure. I know it's Rotary. I know it's the Rotary Classic for them down in Highland County. So that one's going to be a big game for them. So that's going to be a battle between those schools. But winnable games for them. Maybe they've got an outside chance to get into that 12 spot for them. So for division, going back into Division 3, Athens, Miami Trace, Chillicothe, Jackson look like they're all in. Hillsborough is going to still have an outside chance. if they can take care of business. So
Well, when you look at both these screens here, it tells you the Miami Trace Jackson game that we're going to talk about. That's got a lot going on there in terms
yes,
of the way this is going to shake up
yeah, that
or
that
shake
one's
out, I should
yeah.
say.
So that's going to be our streaming game of the week, which we'll talk about. And you can see it down here at the bottom on the ticker, our streaming games, which we'll talk about our volleyball streaming that we'll be doing throughout the week as well. So should be a really fun game over there at Miami Trace. But moving on, we're going to move on to Division um, Division 4. Now, Region 15, Union is already in. They've already clinched, which as I texted Coach Hoops the other night, I'm like, that's crazy because the first week or the first year Union got into the playoffs, that was a
Mhm.
waiting until the last night to see if they even got in, and then it's like, you got in. But that was also the 8 teams, so it was more difficult to get in at that time. But um, they will have a home game now. Will that home game be in week 11 or week 12? It just kind of depends on a couple of things. It looks like they're probably going to win out, and they've been really impressive throughout the year. But probably going to win out. Kind of comes down to Columbus East in that week 10 for Columbus East, if East jumps them or not. That's probably those are really the 4 or 5. Utica could also, I think, drop to the 6 as well. But the big thing for them, they've struggled to win in that first round of the tournament or the playoffs. So if they can get a win, that would be ideal for them. And then anything extra is good from
Mhm.
there. But I think for me, the biggest thing for Union is to try to avoid, Indian Valley in that second round if they can. So if they can stay in that 4, 5, 6, you know, maybe they've got a chance to get 2 wins in that. Indian Valley last year state champion, along with the state player of the year from last year, would be a really monumental task. But at the same time, it's why you play the game.
Well, Unio's got a chance to get a Division 4 win against Westfall in Week 10.
Mhm.
Vinton County was a Division 4 team they beat. Vinton County will probably lose this week, should win in Week 10.
Mm.
And then if you look at Portsmouth, probably not going to beat Ironton in Week 10,
Right.
but they have an opportunity to get a South Point win this week. So just every little thing
Mm.
helps in terms of as I look through some of the schedules there. But again, the first level points really, really matter. So the fact that they are playing a D4 team in Westfall there in Week 10 will
Right.
help a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And a couple other teams that are, in a decent position. Fairfield Union needs to go 1-1. A win this week over Amanda Clear Creek would be
How about that
huge for you.
game with
Yeah.
the 6-3 game with Fairfield Union and Circleville?
Yeah. I mean, just something you don't see a
Yeah.
whole lot. Now we had a 3-0 game a couple weeks ago
Hey,
and then a
I
6-3.
needed that one this week
Yeah.
because I missed a couple, but like it looks like Derek gonna pull away from a
Mhm.
bit there, but I needed that one.
Yeah, so it was an interesting game there for Fairfield Union to win that one, and it was big for them because now they could go 1-1 and get in. Now 2-0 would definitely get them in. For Circleville, they've got a 76% chance to get in if they beat Liberty Union this week in week 9. Week 10 is going to be a little more difficult with Bloom Carroll. I would look for that to be a game also with field goals because kind of what Bloom Carroll does. They're going to play defense. Westfall still outside chance. That chance means they've got to win out, which means beat Piketon, beat Uniota. Really tall task, but um, for Westfall, they're a program that in the last few years has not had a whole lot of those chances. Um, and Coach Stepp has got them going in the right direction for
Big
sure.
game for them this week with Piketon. Westfall Piketon have played some insane games here the
Yes.
last 2 or 3 years. It allows them to get that sixth win. And I think going to Uniota in week 10 would put them in an atmosphere if they were playing for that and Uniota playing for the gold ball and the
Mm,
NFL. It would just put their kids in an atmosphere that could really help them grow into the off season, even if they weren't able to win. Does that make sense? Because
yes.
sometimes you got to expose your kids to it just to kind of get them into the weight room and understand the next step that we have to take.
Yeah, because you know you need to see it.
Yeah.
And the kind of unique thing is if they would win that game, then they would just get right back on the bus the next week and go right back. Is what it kind of is shaking down to. So Westfall still has a chance, but more likely it's going to be Uniota, Circleville, and Fairfield Union in that Region 15 if they can take care of business this week. But Region 16, we still have a team with a chance to get in, which would be Washington. Likely in right now. A win over Hillsborough this week would lock the Blue Lions in to the playoffs. Now they've struggled in FAC play against the bigger, the bigger Chillicothe and Jackson so far, but a win over Hillsborough would lock them in. That win over Granville still stands
Sure.
huge for them, and really the FAC because those teams that have beaten them already are in position to get home games, partially because of that those second level points.
Well,
So
we
that's
highlighted that, what about probably 3 weeks ago? The FAC's had some parity to it, some
mhm.
depth to it, and I think it's really helped those teams is now that they're into conference play because every week you take the field, you not only have the first level opportunity, there's some second level points there available as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's been huge for them. So, big one this week for the Blue Lions. Now, moving on to Division 5, Region 19, which is where our teams sit. Um, you got two teams that are locked into buys. Wheelersburg and Ironton still fighting for that number one seed, which is kind of crazy when you think about the fact that Wheelersburg won that head to head, but Ironton's schedule has been so strong overall that it might be able to bump them up to the one seed, which I mean, really, the big thing there, when you look a little further down, Afrocentric and Harvest Prep, outstanding teams coming out of the Columbus area. Maybe you wanna push them away as long as possible, or maybe you wanna try to get them at home. If they can have to go down into, Scioto and Lawrence County, that's gonna be a lot more difficult in week 12 than maybe in week 13 where maybe they get a neutral site, which still, based on what Ironton brought to Waverly last year to play Harvest Prep, it's not much of a neutral site whenever, they've got a lot of the Southeast backing them, and I think Wheelersburg's got that as well. So, um, Nelsonville York also is locked into a home game. If they can beat Athens in week 10, that would get them to be a lock into a bye as well. So they still have a chance at a bye even at 9-1, but it would really lock them into the bye with a 10-0 record. So Wheelersburg, Ironton, Nelsonville completely locked in right now. Zane Trace not completely locked in, but they are likely in. They should win their last 2 weeks, and by doing so, that would lock them in. They are right on the like 6, 7, 8, 9 range of maybe they get a home game, but maybe they have to go on the
And I know
road.
it'll change right now, but wouldn't that Portsmouth at Zane Trace be a fun matchup
Yeah,
for us
it's
to take
like
a look at?
there we were talking about that today. Me and Kenneth worked together. Um, some of those showcase events we were working at today, and we were talking, and we're like, man, that week 11, if we can get to Zane Trace hosting Portsmouth, Amanda, Colgrove, any of those
Any of
three
those,
teams
yeah.
teams
I
in
wouldn't
week
rule
11.
Piketon out either. I know they gotta come from a ways
Mhm.
back, but there's some teams in front of them that could very well lose some
Yeah.
games down the stretch. And Piketon has 2 teams left on the schedule here that are gonna provide a little bit of,
Mhm.
kickback if they're able to beat them.
Oh yeah, it is wild at the bottom. So Colgrove, Amanda, and Portsmouth all have to feel pretty good right now, but they can't feel great because of schools like Piketon. If Piketon wins out, Piketon's probably into the playoffs, which means it's going to be much more difficult. Portsmouth in week 10 probably not beating Ironton. So they've got to win this week. You win this week, you go in with 6 wins, but you still have to wait and see on Piketon and then Valley. If Valley can beat Grandview Heights, Valley is more than likely in at 8-2.
Yeah.
So Valley has to be 8-2 to get in. Piketon has to be 7-3 to get in. If those two do not get to that mark, then Colgrove, Amanda, and Portsmouth are going to feel pretty good. But right now, it is very wide open at the bottom of Division 5 in Region 19. And man, it's pretty loaded because at the top you've got those really talented teams as it is, but, just kinda looking at it right now, Barnesville even is talented. Columbus Academy is a talented team. Union Local, always talented teams. Those are teams that, not even really mentioning at this point. Um, to go along with Afrocentric and Harvest Prep. Harvest Prep um, has to win this week. They play at Westville South. I believe they're a pretty heavy favorite in that. Let me just
It's a
go.
bizarre schedule with their
Yeah.
scheduling. They have games that don't count. They had a chance to play a D2 school, which obviously doesn't matter what their again, we've talked about this. It
Mm,
doesn't matter what their record is. If you're a D5 and you're beating a D2,
yeah.
that's huge. I mean,
Yeah, they've had a very they've really gone out and challenged themselves, but as you said, some of the games haven't counted. I mean, you lose to the Canadian team, and it didn't count, but at the same time, you lose to them, but you compete with a 7-1 Canadian team, and then you have, St. Vincent St. Mary's, who just has an illness go through their
yeah,
program,
well,
and they're unable to
you
play.
cancel and that an 0-16, maybe they're most likely going to be favored to win. But again, it's a D2. It doesn't matter what their record is.
Right.
That was an
Yeah.
opportunity lost there. So now, if you're Harvest Prep, you're facing what looks like to be a good Division 2 school, and that's probably a must win at this point.
Yeah, they had Perkins come in. Perkins is an outstanding program out of Sandusky. And they beat them by a score, and if they don't win that, they're not getting in even with the
Yeah,
Westerville South game this week, and Westerville South is a 6-2 Division 2 team, who plays a tough schedule as well. They're gonna get in the playoffs in Division 2, but Harvest Prep is favored by 2 scores over them, so that one's gonna be one to look for. If Westerville South wins that, that opens up the bottom of the playoffs as well, so that's gonna get somebody else in. That's where, like, a Valley and Piketon kinda have to root for Westfield South because then that can give them a little bit of leeway as well to try to get into that
yeah. It
last.
looks like Colegrove's got a chance to get to 8-2.
Mhm. Yeah, and Coal Grove, definitely winnable games the next 2, um, and that could probably get them a home game in week 11, which could be where we'd go, but, we'll see. It's gonna be really interesting to follow that. Ironton and Wheelersburg at the top of that division,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you've got some really good teams in there as well as, Nelsonville doesn't get to 8-0 on accident. So, really good region there in
It's
Region
really
18.
deep.
And then moving on to, uh, Division 5 or Division 6, I am talking way too much, so it ends up getting just running into some things. Um, into Division 6, you've got Region 23, and this is I kinda talked to you about this in the, pre-show. It was kinda crazy to me how many schools aren't even in Division 6 compared to some of the other divisions, so, but in Region 23, it looks like Eastern Megs is gonna need some help and to win out to get in. It's a really good division. That I would think that they would be rooting for Valley this week. If Valley can beat Grandview Heights, it can make things a little more difficult. Martins Ferry is one. Martins Ferry's got a couple of tough games coming up. If Martins Ferry drops one of those games, the Purple Riders would more than likely drop below Eastern. I believe Caldwell has a chance to jump them with a couple of wins. For Eastern, 4-3 right now. They've got 2 wins that they got 2 games that they can win coming up. Belpre South or Belpre and Southern. They can get those wins. But right now, they're a team kind of like Northwest. When you look at week 3, they lose a 1-point game in overtime at South Gallia,
Yeah.
and really that's gonna loom large for them because right now at the top of that region, you've got 7-1, 7-1, 7-1, 6-1, 7-1, 7-1, a 5-3, then 7-1, and then more teams with only 2 losses, and then you get Reedsville at 4-3. Gonna be difficult for them to get in, but 6-3, you've definitely got a chance if
Well,
you're the Eagles.
that as you start to study it late in the year here, you realize, man, that gap from 16 down to 12, it
Mhm,
really is a big deal. And I know what people say, well, the whole reason they went to it, we agree with the 16-1, the 15-2, 14. There's still something to be said sometimes of getting in and having that opportunity.
mhm,
Um, Especially in some of these lower divisions, because oftentimes in the lower divisions, you maybe lose a few more times because depending on what kind of conference you're
right.
going to, that type of thing. So it's there's some really good football programs up there at the top in terms of Centerburg, Mount Yellow, the West Jeff. no question. But again, you'd love to see some of our local teams at least get to the playoff stage and have a chance.
Yeah, for sure. And then we have Region 24. Rock Hill looks like if they can get one more win, that they will have a home game.
There's another score that blew my mind. I'm not
Yeah,
saying that I didn't think Portsmouth could beat them. I never thought Portsmouth was just going to blow them out. So
right. Yeah. And so they've got one this week with Chesapeake, a win over Chesapeake, and it's more than likely going to be a home game for them. They would need to win over Colgrove in week 10 to get a bye. That would make things a little more difficult for them. But right now they're sitting at the 4. I mean, Coldwater sitting at the 5. I mean, who are they? So it's a crazy region there as well because you got Mechanicsburg, you got Coldwater. I mean, it's you
yeah, how
just
would you like to
Anna.
sneak in at the 12 and be like, okay, where are we heading? Oh, you're going to Coldwater.
Yeah, so I think for like a Huntington, you're probably hoping that Rock Hill does not beat Coldgrove because it going to even the drive.
Well, now you don't
Yeah,
even know. Like going
yeah,
back to this OVC, like I think what happened. Remember, we said eye test. I think
mm,
sometimes it can work the other way because Uniota's so good. It
mm,
made Portsmouth look so bad on opening
right,
night. Like I mean, they couldn't even snap the ball. Like they couldn't
mm,
play. And then here they are, a month and a half later, like just whooping really good football teams.
right.
So I mean, it's just sometimes the eye test works the opposite on you in terms you can't get what you've already watched out of your mind.
Right. Yeah, it ends up being a really can throw things off from you just
Yeah.
if you don't know, and
So, like, if
especially
you had to pick Rock Hill, Coldgrove tomorrow, who you picking? I don't know. You know what I mean?
right.
Like, it's that OVC's been wild.
Yeah, it's been all over the place this year, and because of that, it's probably gonna get them some extra teams in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, but Rock Hill likely in with a home game with another win, which would be Chesapeake, who's 0-8. So I think more than likely they're gonna win that game. Um, West, if they can beat Oak Hill this week, even at 5-5, they're gonna be into the playoffs. Huntington is gonna be on the bubble if they win this week and lose in week 10. They would be right on the verge, but 7-3 would guarantee a spot in the playoffs for Huntington. And as we mentioned, for Huntington, they haven't had a winning season this century. So just getting that sixth win is a huge thing for that program. And I think that you're going to see Huntington in the playoffs a lot more times than you're not here in the next few years. As you mentioned, that program big time on the rise, and they've got winnable games coming up. With their um, you know game this week at Adena, playing at Bostic Field, never easy to do, but a winnable game for them. And then they host Piketon in week 10, which think you're probably going to see us in the hills at that one. Would be a big time matchup for them. More than likely a playoff spot for the winner of that. So um, more than likely that's going to be what we get out of our Region 24 teams. Rooting for all of them to be able to get in, and then moving on to Division 7. You have man, this is and we've talked about this a little bit with the SOC one where they're very spread out, but Region 27, there's 2 teams in week 10 that are probably gonna be playing for a bye, um, and maybe for a home game, but Waterford, uh, on the far side of our coverage area, Waterford's gonna have a bye. Looks like they're probably locked in the 2. When I was talking to Kenneth about this earlier, just looking at the scale of that whole region. Hillsdale is like, you know, night and day above the rest. And then you have Waterford and Danville, and then it's a big drop again. So it looks like Waterford is probably going to be pretty comfortably in that 2 spot. Their win over Caldwell looks really good right now in week 2. They lost to Fort Fried, lost a 1 point game to Nelsonville, which we talked about a little bit here on overtime in week 5. And besides that, they've been really good 47-0, 63-0 the last 2 weeks. They've got games against Trimble and Belpre in the next 2 weeks, probably going to finish 8-2. A really good program over there at Waterford. Um, they're a school that, despite their size, is competitive in pretty much everything year in year out. So really impressive in the small school division for them.
Sims Valley jumps out at me in
Yep.
that 6 hole there because again, they play 2 solid football teams that are gonna have anywhere from 6 to 8 wins by the time
Mhm.
we're all done. And so they're gonna have an opportunity to still try to hang in there for a bye, certainly a home game.
Yeah, so if they can get a win in the next 2 weeks over Notre Dame or South Gaia, a win either way, more than likely a bye. If they lose out, probably still a home game, even if they lose out. But win out, and it's going to be a bye for them, and maybe even with just a win for South Gaia, things a little more difficult. Because, well, I mean, really playing 7-1 and 6-2, it's very difficult
It's
either
right
way.
there in front of you,
Yeah,
but it's gonna be home.
yeah,
Yeah,
but when I say more difficult for South Gaia, it's because they play 8-0 and 7-1,
yeah.
as they play Eastern Pike this week. It looks like they are probably leaning more towards that like 6 to 8 range. But a win over Sims Valley in week 10 would make things a lot more interesting for them. As right now they're sitting at 6-2, 7 wins gets them a home game for sure. 6 wins makes things a lot more difficult
I was gonna
on a
say
home
6
game.
and 4 doesn't eliminate them, but man,
Yeah.
it gets really, really interesting at that point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
6-4, and they're gonna have to go on the road, and it's gonna be a lot more difficult for them in that week 11. Trimble also has a chance to get a home game, but I think really would need a win this week. So, at Trimble, that's one of the cooler places I've been to watch a football game. So,
Mhm.
um, they Waterford with a bye, Sims Valley and South Gay are probably playing for a home game in week 10, and maybe for even a bye for Sims Valley if they can take care of business this week. Now, for Region 28, Eastern's all but locked up a bye. They got to win this week, but with how they've played the last 2 weeks, I feel pretty good about them winning this week. Another win, and maybe even just any win over the last 2 weeks would lock it up for them. But when you've won 30 plus regular season games in a row, you're feeling pretty good. And as we talked about at depth on Eastern, they
Oh,
are an
yeah.
outstanding program. Notre Dame can lock up a home game with a win over Sims Valley this week. Um, this is Region 28, if I didn't mention that. So for Notre Dame, it would be a big time win for them. If they could get Sims Valley this week, I think that one's really a toss up. They're gonna beat Sideville East in week 10,
Mhm.
and if they go in 8-2, they're still going to get a home game. So all they got to do is get one win in the next two, but getting a win in both, and they're probably getting a bye um, in that Marion local at the top of Region 28. Not really ideal to have to play, but they are a team that is you know at some point someone's got to beat them.
Yeah.
It's gonna be really difficult, but someone's gotta do it at some point 'cause, all streaks, eventually come to an
Well,
end.
you just again, you want the opportunity.
Yes.
So you gotta take care of all the gotta check all the boxes on the way there to get to that opportunity.
Mhm. And then one last team that does still have an outside chance, a win this week puts them at 43% would be Manchester,
Huh.
a must win in week 10 against Fisher Catholic. Hey, by the way, Van Loo has a win. Shout out to the Wildcats. We've talked about them a couple different times. They typically win like one game a year. They did get a win, so that's Manchester's opponent for this week. They do have to go to Van Loo, but they beat them 48-0 earlier this year in the rare high school home and home. But then they got Fisher Catholic in week 10 at home. They're a big underdog in that, but a win there and Manchester probably gets in.
Sure.
So, yeah, so that's our full playoff kind of picture of where you're at right now. It's taken up a lot of the show so far. So, a lot of teams still with their chance to get in the playoffs. Make sure you check out joeidle.com for that, fantastic50.net, two great websites for all of those scores. And they kind of do the rundown as a whole as well. So, sites that I'm on pretty often.
No, it is. It's a great site, and remember we talked about it on the show a while back of like no matter what you think of it, it's become accepted that this is how we do the playoffs in football, and everybody knows it. And they know how to schedule, and they know how to play, and they know
Mhm.
what you get for this and what you don't get for this, and it helps. And I think it's something that I'd like to see all sports get, moving in that
Yes.
direction and find that type of formula.
I had a good time following the RPI stuff last year in
Sure,
basketball. I mean,
sure.
to just kinda see where people were going, and then that can help you
Yeah.
on the
And
scouting.
again, you don't maybe agree with all the formula because it's so young, but again, they'll tweak it and but I can tell you it's a step in the right direction for
Yes.
sure.
100%. And then a lot of good games this week, but the game of the week, it's going to be our streaming game here on SOSA on the YouTube channel. Jackson 6-2 at Miami Trace 8-0 FAC title on the line in this game. The winner at least gets a share. Miami Trace with a win all but locks it up.
Well, I tell you, probably one of the highest level football games we covered this year is when we went to do the Chillicothe at Miami Trace. Now
Mhm.
we return there for Jackson Miami Trace. It's one of the elite facilities. I
Mm.
highlighted that when we went down there. Um, just going to be an incredible atmosphere. Really, really good football game. Even if you're out at your game, I would encourage you maybe come home, turn that on, go back over the weekend, watch it or whatever.
Mm.
I really think we're in for a can't miss, a good one.
Yeah, it should be a great game. Bodie Wolford back for
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
and that's made a big time difference for them. Ryan Simons, an outstanding all around player. CJ Crabtree had one of our most viewed clips we've ever had here with that spectacular interception to lock up the Little Miami win. And they're a team. They've got a lot of athletes, really good line play as well.
Was the first half at Jackson last year, Guthrie got hurt.
Mhm,
Am I making that
I
up?
believe
I
so.
think that's right, because remember, he didn't play the rest of the way, and then it went all the way into basketball.
Mm,
But, you know this Miami Trace senior group has to have this one highlighted for a long, long time, and the opportunity they have in front of them.
yeah, and they've got a tough. Each of them have a tough week 10. Chillicothe with Jackson with Chillicothe, and then Miami Trace, the big rival in Washington. But this is a huge game for both teams. Uh, Julian Baker, one of the best athletes and players in the Southeast District, and one of the top running backs in Division III in the state of Ohio. He's going to go play big time college football after Adam Guthrie. Obviously, anytime you commit to Clemson,
You're
pretty
doing
good.
right, yeah.
Yeah, so you're doing all right. They've got outstanding line play all over. Phelps has been a really nice, or Phipps has been a
Fifth, yeah.
yeah, has been a really nice addition for Miami Trace. Their defense plays really well. Jackson, this should be, as Coach Hall said on the call-in show the other day, this will be quick because you're going to
You still
see.
have that pulled up? What's the line on that game, favorite wise? While he's doing that, I would say this: keep in mind, Miami Trace playing out in front is so important. We've highlighted that. We've had him now against Waverly. We've had him against Chillicothe. The ability to play out in front is really important. But remember in that Chillicothe game when they needed to go to the air, they were able to use Baker out of the
Mm,
backfield on a couple wheel routes, once to the left, once to the right, and um, that's just enough to put that on film and to put it out there a little bit,
mm.
just to kind of keep people
Right.
honest.
Yeah, it's gonna definitely keep teams honest for sure. But in that one, it's got Miami Trace, or it's got Jackson as a 2 score favorite, which I think goes to
Two
maybe that.
school.
Yeah, I was kind
Huh.
of surprised by that, but
No, I
uh,
would have before even looking at it, I would have guessed Jackson by 6.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a real close game.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have probably been something similar for
Huh.
me as well. So, should be a really good crowd that night. Big time atmosphere, big time players all over the field. Some outstanding coaches as well. Two really good programs that are going to the playoffs for sure for both of them, as they both looking for home games and maybe a bye as well. If let's say Miami Trace can uh, get a win and gets 10-0, they're a 98% chance to get a bye. For Jackson, if they win out and get to 8-2, 8-2 would put them at a 70% chance at a bye. So this is a big time game
Yeah.
because you want to have a home game no matter what. You want to make it as easy as you can. You want, just looking at Jackson right now and their probable opponents, you want Archbishop McNicholas to have to come to Jackson. And
Well, when you start,
yeah,
the other part of getting a bye too is in these higher divisions. a bye is huge. In the lower
Yeah.
divisions, if you're elite, okay, you have to play, but you're probably going to be a big favorite to win that home game in
Mhm.
in the lower
Yeah.
division. You know what I mean? The higher division, you start bringing in D3 teams and so forth from Columbus, Cincinnati, wherever.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're running in.
Yeah, you're going to run into some outstanding teams, no matter what in those divisions, and because of that, this game is huge. Not only FAC implications, but playoff implications as well. So, should be a really fun game over Washington Courthouse Way. I know we'll be there. I'll be there for a half, and should be a really fun one before coming back for the coaches' call-in show.
Well, no question. So John, I want to move on to soccer, and I would love to get the majority of your time on the tournament preview. So let's just kind of rapid fire these a little bit. Certainly take the time to
Yeah.
talk a little bit, but I'll just go down through a conference. Tell us a little bit about the champion. Let's start with the FAC.
Uh, it's been Chillicothe for years. Not Chillicothe on either side this time, as the Jackson boys get their first ever gold ball. They've been a program that has had some ups and downs, um, and it's kind of been in the middle for a long time. It's been a long time since they've won the FA, or I'm not sure if they've ever won the FAC. Uh, but also the SEOAL. They play some really good soccer for Jackson. This is their first ever gold ball, though. Really nice accomplishment for Jackson. Now, keep in mind that SEOAL meant they had to play Logan and Athens all the time, and those are some outstanding programs
No
as well.
question.
On the girls' side, McLean gets the win. Uh, Edging out really good Miami Trace and Jackson programs as well. So nice work there. Jackson boys, McLean girls getting the FAC titles.
Yeah, interesting to see Jackson play that level of soccer when you know what their football tradition's
Right.
been, and the McLean girls there. I know a lot of those kids will translate over onto the basketball court
Mhm.
there in the winter. That's good stuff. What about the OVC?
OVC, the boys not really close. Gaia goes 10-0 in OVC play. Chesapeake, a good program and one of their better teams they've had, but Gaia just at another level this year, which is the reason why they're the number one in Division Three, the number one seed there. For the girls, was a really interesting league to look at because Gaia and Fairland tied twice. So they both had two ties, but Rock Hill was able to get Fairland the first time they played. Because of that, Gaia stayed undefeated, unbeaten. Gaia gets the win by a game over Fairland, thanks to Rock Hill on the girls' side. So nice work there by the Blue Devils and Blue Angels to get the win in the OVC.
And it jumps out at me to see the Blue Angels win a soccer championship when you
Yes.
consider they just went 22-0 in volleyball. That's impressive.
Mhm.
Now, in the SOC, they've gone to the three, but in
Yeah.
soccer, they only two, correct?
There are only
You
two,
got to knock both those out for us.
and the girls only has one.
Okay.
So on the girls' side, it was Wheelersburg. Menford Valley, both outstanding teams as well. On the boys' side, which if you look at SOC one, Valley wins it. They tied with Ironton St. Joseph, and then they beat them the second time. Clay also strong this year as well, but Valley ends up getting the winning the conference in SOC one and SOC two, which was a game I was at last week. We did a lot of different things, highlighting different things on our different social medias. Wheelersburg gets the win in that they beat South Webster 4-1 to get a one game win in that division. And then if you really just want to go deep into that, the next conference that we're going to talk about, Minford, without a senior, because there's one senior is hurt, without a senior, and I believe only like one or two juniors, they go out and they beat North Adams this past week. An outstanding win for Minford. Just an outstanding conference because Waverly is on their way back up. Northwest is solid. Just a really tough conference, and Wheelersburg once again wins it for their fourth straight year.
Well, speaking of North Adams, we'll go to the Shack there. I know you've been high on Fayetteville throughout the year. How'd they
Mm.
end up doing?
On the girls' side, Fayetteville girls win. Now, I was able to highlight and celebrate Fairfield beating Lynchburg, first loss for Lynchburg since
Unbelievable.
2010 in league play
That was
on the
good
girls' side.
coverage, by the
Yeah,
way. That's incredible.
yeah, it just an outstanding and it was a goal with 2 minutes left, and that and kind of if you looked at Lynchburg's season, it wasn't what they have been. So you kind of thought there's a chance it was going to happen with Fayetteville, but Fairfield gets them first. So Fairfield gets the distinction to
Yeah.
be the trivia question at some point in
Um,
Shack lore, but Fayetteville goes undefeated in league play, just dominated from start to finish. They had, I believe, it was a 4-1 win over Fairfield, and then on Saturday still needed a win over Lynchburg to clinch the league, and they get a 5-1 win over Lynchburg. So the Fayetteville girls win. Now, on the boys' side, Fayetteville early in the season beats North Adams 2-0, and they go in undefeated. They come into the last game of the regular season undefeated, and they lose 3-0 to Lynchburg. So because of that, North Adams and Fayetteville each finish, I believe 6-1 in Shack play, and they each tie for the Shack on the boys' side. So Fayetteville comes 80 minutes from an undefeated regular season. Unfortunately for them, they drop to Lynchburg. Lynchburg is one of those teams we're going to talk about in the tournament preview, an outstanding team as well. So Fayetteville gets one and a half Shack titles on in soccer, and North Adams gets the other half.
well, I assume we're going to have some repeats here because anytime you win a conference champion, again, you have that bullseye, the expectation
Mhm.
sky high in the
Yeah.
postseason, rightfully so. So in the tournament preview, we'll go to the boys' side first. I know we're basically looking at D3, D4, D5. Start with us in D3 with Guy Academy.
Yeah, just gonna kinda go kinda quick on this. I think Gaia Academy is the likely favorite. Uh, you know, they've got an outstanding team. They've been very good throughout the year. They've upped their schedule, and that's why they were able to get the 1 seed because they've gone out of their way to, uh challenge themselves in the non-conference as well as dominating their conference play. I think they're likely the favorite, but don't sleep on the second round opponent, the winner of Warren and Athens. It's going to be a really good first round game there. And then Jackson is looking for their first district championship since 2005. They're the 2 seed, and they're the 2 seed for a reason. They've had an outstanding season. They're another one. They've gone out, played a really tough non-conference schedule, and they earned that number 2 spot. Gaia with a close win over Jackson got them to 1 over Jackson, but Fairfield Union Marietta 3-6. Now Marietta's got to win their first round game, but they're going to win their first round game. But Fairfield Union and Marietta, even if Marietta comes in as the 6th seed, that's going to be a really tough game for or for um, Jackson in that 2-3. But man, um, the Division 3 districts are going to be just a minefield. Whoever gets through that gauntlet is going to really have earned it.
Well, now, in Division 4, obviously, you know far better than I do, but just listening to you talk all year, following your incredible updates when you go out to cover them, I would think Wheelersburg's got to be big time Division 4 favorite here.
Yes, Wheelersburg big time favorite. They've won the district every year going back to 2020. The year before they lost in a shootout, and then you go back and they've won some more. So I mean they're the big time favorite, undefeated for a reason. Nick Sylvia is amazing. They've started or they start a lot of seniors, their entire defensive line and their goalie are seniors. A lot of experience there. And then Evan Mitchell is one of the best facilitators in the Southeast District. He had a goal and an assist in that win over South Webster as well. With that, I don't see anyone really pushing them. South Point could be an interesting one in a district final, but I think this is going to be a district final. Going to be pretty easy for Wheelersburg to get the 2 wins to get out and win the district title, and then they would take on the team from the south or the other southeast team, which would be between Alexander and Uniota. More than likely, Uniota would have to get past Ironton more than likely, they'll be able to do so in that. For Alexander, the only thing with Alexander, they came in as the 2 seed. They've lost 6 of their last 7, including their
Yeah.
last 5. They're a team that last year, as I mentioned earlier in the season, they had won 2 games last year. This year, they started off getting 8 wins quickly, and then the back end of their schedule has kind of caught up. how's their confidence? They should be able to get their confidence back with a game against Wellston. And then Logan Elman McLean is a very winnable game for them in that district semifinal. But Uniota has also played a really tough schedule, and they seem to be getting going. They tied South Webster this past week, and they seem like they're getting going in the right direction. I think they're that as a district championship game could be really exciting. It was a 1 goal game when they played earlier. Uniota won. I look for that to be another probably 1 goal game in a district final there.
Well, yeah, winning's fun, losing's not.
Yes.
Losing a little can help you find your weaknesses and what to work
Mhm.
on. Losing a lot can dent the confidence. So
Yes.
what you're saying there, that's really interesting going in there. And the last division on the boys' side, Division 5. In my notes, I always think South Webster, but am I
Mhm.
overlooking something?
I just think Chesapeake, 2 things. Chesapeake has had a very good season. They have an outstanding goal scorer as well. You coming in as the 8 seed at 10-1-2 is kinda crazy because that shows the depth of
Yeah.
this Division 5, but South Webster also dealing with an injury at, goalie. The benefit for them, you have to put a freshman in at goalie against Wheelersburg, Uniota, Jackson. Those are the 3 games that he gets to prep for the tournament. They tie Uniota, they tie Jackson. They do lose to Wheelersburg, but even giving up 8 goals in those 3 games, gives up 3 against Uniota, 1 against Jackson, who can really score the ball. To me, shows that they're a little bit closer. Now they could be down Benaiah Andrews. Um, we'll see the ruling on that. It was a card late in that game against Wheelersburg. We'll see if it was 2 or more games. If it's more games, that's going to make things a lot more difficult. Now they've got um, the winner of Fairfield and Western, and Chesapeake would have to beat Northwest. As we said, Northwest comes from that really good SOC too. But I think South Webster and Chesapeake could be an interesting game if South Webster, that could be the last game without Andrews if certain suspensions have gone or if they stay similar. I do think South Webster probably wins that game, but that could be an interesting one. Then you look down a little bit further. Eastern Brown Lynchburg as a district semifinal could be really, really fun. They played a tight one in the regular season, and that one could be really interesting as well. You know, Lynchburg's gotta play a New Boston team that's gonna come in over 500 though, to get there, but I think that could be a really fun night, October 20th, so next Monday at Zane Trace, South Webster against possibly Chesapeake or Northwest, and then Eastern Brown and Lynchburg could be really fun, to have a chance to play on that Saturday at Zane Trace in district championship. And then on the bottom half, when I looked at it, I'm like, "Oh, North Adams against Valley, that should be a really fun one." Well, then Menford is like, well, we're still here."
Yeah.
As they beat North Adams on Saturday, a huge win for Menford. Very young team, outstanding young goalie, some really talented young kids. Ashton Reeder is an outstanding leader for them and a kid who's won a ton of games between soccer and basketball in the last year. He knows how to win and is a big
As you
time
say,
leader.
coming off the winning experience and you're playing with a little bit of house money, you become really dangerous.
Yeah, so if they can beat Peebles, uh, them against North Adams in a rematch at St. Trace next Wednesday could be really fun. And then Valley and Ironton St. Joseph would also be a rematch. It would be the third match there. And I think any of those 4 teams could win a district title as well.
Good stuff. All over on the girls' side, when you go D3, obviously locally, I know a little bit about Miami Trace Uniota, but again, I always lean on you for my soccer stuff. I've heard you over and over and over talk about just the soccer culture at Fairfield Union. I throw
Mm.
Marietta in there too. Can Miami Trace Uniota compete at that type of level, or Marietta Fairfield Union a little bit more of a standard?
It's going to be tough because, you know, but I'll get to the reason why it could be interesting. I think Fairfield Union is going to be a really tough one to knock off because they have outstanding goalkeeping. Uh, they just know how to win. That's another one they
Culture.
know how to win. It's Marietta and Fairfield Union pretty often playing later in the tournament. But for the winner of Miami Trace Uniota, they would play Marietta at Logan, which is a big, big field where Marietta plays in the regular season small grass field. When they would have to go play on the big turf field, you could see a difference in that. But at the same time, they're an outstanding program. So I think we're going to see Marietta versus Fairfield Union in a district title on the 25th at Logan. I think that's probably where we're going to be. Don't sleep on the Athens team and the 3 seed. They are a really good defensive team. Chapman does an outstanding job leading them. They have a hard time scoring, but they also have a hard time giving up goals as well. So an outstanding defensive team there. But that Miami Trace and Uniota game, I believe that is on Wednesday of this week. Should be a really fun matchup for for soccer fans there. A high level match on the soccer pitch on Wednesday.
Yeah, and then we go on to Division 4. I know you highlighted Guy Academy earlier. Some conference champions all over the place here. I know you talked about Guy Academy already, McLean already, Wheelersburg already. I assume you throw that many champions into one division. We're in for some pretty good soccer.
Yeah, you should have some outstanding soccer in that. Gaia and Hillsborough, I think, has a really interesting chance to be a pretty fun matchup. Kobe Miles, one of the better goal scorers in the Southeast District from Hillsborough. They played a tough schedule, so they come in with the 5 seed. I think that's got a chance to be a really fun game at Valley next Monday. Um, the winner of that gets Alexander more than likely. Now, Rock Hill comes in with the craziest like a 6-1 all league games on the year. I haven't found any evidence of them playing anything but league games. But maybe that's how you get your best athletes out and you stay healthy. So they're going to come in with a.
You assume again, I'm assuming, but like I assume they probably multi-sport athletes and
I
they at
would I
least were
would
able to
guess
put
so.
together
Yeah.
a program doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, Rock Hill's been a program that they've been strong in the past, so maybe it's their way of rebuilding. Alexander's had a really good year. I think they're probably the favorite to win this district on their side. And then on the bottom, man, if you get Wheelersburg and McLean in a district final next Thursday night, it's going to be a big one over at Valley. That Wheelersburg team just has some outstanding scores. The Ellas, if Mackenzie Mullins is back healthy, I know she had some issues due to it's kind of a cheap shot that she took. It kind of took like a champ, but at the same time, it's like didn't react to it, which is something that you really like to see out of a young player. Um, but the Ellas they have they do an outstanding job. Can really score the ball. I think Wheelersburg probably the favorite, but that McLean team we've talked about, they've won the FAC for a reason. Paisley Pryor, an outstanding goal scorer. You're going to see uh, some high level soccer in that, some really good offensive soccer. McLean plays a really heavy, or really senior heavy defensive team for McLean. So look for them to really go all in defensively and try to get Paisley Pryor to break one to get a win there.
Now, here's what's interesting for me on this one is the dynamic of just high school sports increasing your divisions over the years. And we're
Mhm,
going to see it in track. We're going to see it eventually next year in cross country. We've already noticed it for a while in football, and
mhm,
we're going to notice it more and more as years go on here in all the sports.
mhm,
So you get into this D5. Am I wrong in thinking it opens up some opportunities for more programs that
mhm.
maybe before had to, end up running into one of those teams you just highlighted,
Right.
where now more teams may be able to go down to 5, get in a little bit more of a fair enrollment type of bracket, and and again, just offer them a chance to play for a district title. Maybe I'm way off on that, but maybe talk about that as you break that down for us a little bit.
Well, I think last year you saw the benefit for Menford and the boys' side is
Sure.
they don't win the SOC. The SOC winner, Wheelersburg, goes to Division 4. Because of that, they go to Division 5. So they had to beat a really good North Adams team. They do it in a shootout. They had to beat a really good South Webster team. They do it they use a late penalty kick in that to win that game. Then you go play Grandview Heights, who is a bear. Beat them. But in reality, you've got to be the best in the Southeast, and then you play even though they're an outstanding program, it's still a public school out of Columbus, as opposed to playing the private schools out of Columbus, which go up a division.
Right.
So, where one of the issues schools have had for a long time in the Southeast getting out would be like you see a DeSales. the years that Unita and Alexander made it to the Final Four in Division Two when it was still three divisions, they went and played the East. So that gave you get the teams in the East as opposed to the Central, you've got more of a chance. And with Division Five, you've still got to go through Grandview Heights, who's outstanding always, and maybe a Worthington Christian. I haven't looked to see where Worthington Christian is, but more than likely Worthington Christian is probably Division Four. It gives you a chance to compete not only at the district level but also in that regional level. And then I know the schools in the East have to be really happy too. They got a state champion out of it last year. They had never had a team make it to the Final Four because they had always had to go.
And I guess that's
Yeah,
my point. Not even knowing the teams, just almost having a soccer discussion of like it just gives a more fair opportunity,
yeah.
I guess is the way to look at it.
Well, and then if you look at some of these Lynchburg teams in that are they're Division Five now. If you look at Lynchburg teams from the past where they've had to run into like Cincinnati Country Day, you get them either in the regional semi or the state. Well, maybe you push it back even further. Maybe you're able to go through the east as opposed to the southwest. And it does open things up. And like you mentioned, opportunities. It gave Minford a chance to get to the Final Four last year because they had to beat that Grandview Heights team
Yeah.
and the girls' regional final. But because they were able to take care of business, and that was an outstanding team. And for that Minford, um, very senior heavy last year, even though you have your goalie back and some other really talented players, um, by having that senior heavy team, you have a chance to advance and possibly do so. And I think the more divisions opens that chance up.
So in that Division Five, then talk to us real quick about some things that you like on the bracket.
Well, I thought it was really interesting, and I mentioned it last week. Fairfield had a really good win. They had the best win in Division Five by going to Wheelersburg and beating them. But it was 6-5. Just a wild game on a Saturday. You win that game 6-5, and then they go out and they play Uniota, Alexander, and I'm trying to remember the third team, but it, ma- they played three outstanding teams back to back to back, lose all three games, and none were really that close. It seemed like they went to the high and then they just took a big step back. But then last week, they play FAC champion McLean and they beat McLean on Monday. Then they play Lynchburg and break that huge streak on Wednesday. So now Fairfield, who I wasn't feeling great about, is right back to where I'm like, I feel
Yeah.
pretty good about them because they went out and they really upped their schedule. By upping their schedule, it's rewarded them, even though at 8-5, they maybe don't come in, even though the records are kind of down this year in Division Five, which is why I think it's pretty wide open. But by challenging themselves, and then you've got Vivian Henninger, who's an outstanding player overall. You've got several seniors that can really play. You're going to have a chance no matter what. But because of that, they are going to be battle tested. So even though only one team gets out in the Southeast, which is going to make things more difficult to get to the state level, um, it definitely opens things up for Fairfield. I think they've got an excellent chance. Eastern Brown and Minford on Wednesday of this week. Now they both have to win. Chesapeake and Northwest are teams that are solid, but it'll be difficult for them to win. Eastern Brown hosting Minford. Right now it's at 6 o'clock. That ain't gonna be a 6 o'clock game because they're not gonna be able to get it in before darkness. I would guess that'll probably be a 4:30 start on that on Wednesday. That one's gonna have a chance to be a really good game. Outstanding goalkeeping in that game. I liked what I saw at Eastern Brown. The winner gets Fairfield, who finished second in the shack behind Fayetteville. But overall, it's got a chance to be a really interesting matchup there. Then on the bottom, Lynchburg, they just tied North Adams. That would be a second round game. They've won just repeated district titles. Going to be really difficult for them to repeat there. But the game that I really have my eyes on, and this is the one where I said like someone's got to travel. Ripley has to go to Westfall. That is a crazy travel because that is the not the southernmost because that's South Point, but like the southwestmost school in our district playing the northernmost school, the northwesternmost school. in Westfall. So that's going to be a
Well,
tough.
2.5 hours, just off the top of my head,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah,
2.5.
that's a heck of a trip. And if Ripley wins that, then they got to go to Valley. So it's none of that's short for them, but it probably gives them a better chance than they would have in the South East. So if
It might
Westfall,
be too. I may be missing a little way to zigzag up
yeah,
through there, but I mean, that's a
it's
long way.
it's a long way. So um, yeah, for Ripley, a tough one to go at Westfall. Westfall won, I think, their first 13 games of the season before dropping a couple later in the season. So Westfall at Valley on Wednesday, I think could be a really interesting game. I'm not sure how Westfall is. I just know you start off 13-0, pretty good start to your season. So Valley is a team that a newer program on the girls' side should be interesting for them. Let's see, what is it?
No, it didn't. I didn't
Oh,
get the right one in
oh, did you get Ripley, West Virginia?
there. I got the West Hill. Oh,
So,
West Hill.
Lynchburg and Valley could be a really interesting game. I do think Division 5 is very wide open on the girls' side. Wouldn't shock me if Minford made a run as a dark horse.
Says 86 miles, 1 hour 49 minutes.
Mhm.
So on a bus, I'm guessing you're over 2 hours.
Yeah. Now, I did cover a game early in SOSA's history. It was Chesapeake at Westfall for a first round tournament game as well. So I mean, Westfall has benefited from not having to take the bus rides on some of those, but man, some of those are hauls for sure. So Shayne, I've talked a lot today, so maybe we're gonna let you get some talking in. I hope you're ready for it because got some volleyball.
All
So
right.
kind of want to go into this as well. So pretty similar. Are you feeling good to go
Oh, yeah.
similar way?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let's start the same place we started on soccer side and start with league champions. And we're going to start in the FAC.
Yeah, down in the FAC, we had Chillicothe, Miami Trace split, and they actually were able to go into uh, to each other's own home gym and win road matches.
Mm,
We actually had the Miami Trace at Chillicothe.
mm,
Remember, Dewey,
mm,
myself. That was a really, really good one, and Miami Trace was able to win that one. But we even came away thinking that night it was Miami Trace in four that you know we felt like Chillicothe almost played right with them, if not
mm,
outplayed them in about three of them. And so we felt like going back over to Miami Trace. Remember, we were caught in a pickle. Do we go
mm.
there? Do we go? Because that was the
Right.
night, I believe, the rematch in Circleville Elm.
Mhm.
And it ended up being an outstanding opportunity for Chillicothe. So both of those teams run the table the rest of the way through the FAC. And that breaks quite a streak for Miami Trace.
Mhm.
They've been pretty dominant in that conference for quite some time. And now Chillicothe and Miami Trace both into the D3 part of the bracket. And when it comes tournament time, they will share the FAC title at 9-1.
So yeah, so let's you know that was one of those games, and it was another one where it was if we would have done that, that was gonna be a late night because
Oh,
that was a score that didn't come in until after
uh,
10. So when you're playing those 3 games and it's kinda crazy with volleyball because sometimes they go quick, other times they don't. It's 'cause sometimes you have, like, the basketball night where you play the 3 levels and each one takes about an hour till you get to the
well, you get
varsity.
a lot of warm up time, and then you
Yeah.
get do you go straight sets? Do you go three? All of those factors factor in, and yeah, it's just that there's no way of knowing. You just have to go with it, and when it's time to play, play.
Yeah. So let's go alphabetical order.
Okay.
So we started at the FAC. I'm gonna 100% miss somebody. MSL.
Yeah, the Mid-State League, we just talked about it, in our coverage area for the most part, Circleville, Logan Elm battling it out. Bloom Carroll ends up winning the
Mm,
conference. Bloom Carroll would be 11-1, Circleville 10-2, Logan Elm 9-3. Remember, Logan Elm got Circleville earlier in the year in a match that we had, just
mm,
an amazing match here on SOSA. We go back for the rematch. Circleville returns the favor during that same week. Remember, Circleville had the incredible win against Bloom Carroll that I think the coaches really utilized as their number one reason, regardless of how many losses they had, of giving them that top seed.
yeah.
And then Circleville needed a little help from Logan Elm. Bloom Carroll was able to beat them, though. And so Bloom Carroll gets to the 11-1 mark. And coming into the year, when people say, oh, Bloom Carroll should take a step back. Well, step back means I guess they lost the game. So they were 11-1 against Circleville Logan Elm just back, but obviously that's high level volleyball when you get in the top part of that top.
It's just outstanding conference, as you mentioned, and as we've been able to see and highlight here on Overtime presented by Perfection One. Next, we're going to go to the Ohio Valley Conference.
Yeah, Ohio Valley Conference, Guy Academy, 22-0 on the yesterday. Run the table. That's unbelievable. I don't care what sport you're playing. I don't care who you're playing. We were just talking about this. Carson and I were talking about this in the air the other night as those two football teams come in undefeated. And I just said, look, I don't care what you're playing. When you're dealing with high school kids, the focus night in, night out to go out and get the job done, and the focus not to play up or down to your competition. You set the standard and you play to it. And they're really, really complete. We had them a year ago, and we kind of started to really, really see the potential. I think they were 17-5 regular season last year, went 18-6 overall by the end of the tournament. They come back and they not only had Clark at setter, now Clark and Fraser as hitters, and then the real improved libero play of Bennett, but then they add in Barnes and Saunders at the net, and it's just become a complete team that's really fun to watch. It's a dynamic program. I'm excited to follow them in the tournament. So congratulations to Guy Academy, 22-0, what an accomplishment.
Yeah, just outstanding team as we've highlighted a couple different times through live streams and then a lot of coverage as well. So let's go to the Southern Hills. Let's go to Shack One.
Yeah, and well, in the Shack, you went to North Adams. They had the outstanding setter play, and they just did a real good job. They run the table all the way through. They do not lose. As you get down into the smaller part of that, Fairfield and Fayetteville up there around the 10 win mark, and so they would go there. But North Adams, really kind of a sleeper team. We'll talk about in the tournament here in just a second. Um, Great opportunity for them coming up here in the tournament, but again when you run the table and you set yourself apart from the rest of your league, there's something to be said for that.
Yes, outstanding, as you mentioned. So let's go to the small SOC, SOC one.
Okay, so the SOC now in volleyball they do the three.
Yes.
Okay, so if you start me at the smallest of those, you're getting down into the Notre Dame.
Yes.
Notre Dame goes 10-0. They win it by 3 games. I don't have that in front of me. I want to say New Boston was 7-3, but had a chance to see Notre Dame in person earlier this year against Alexander and Huntington. Really nice team. Will be a very high level contender for a Division 7 district title. That they have some nice size at the net, pretty good back row play. So just be interested to see if they can turn it up a notch now as they go, and by the time they get into that district final level, the competition really ramp up.
Now SOC two.
As you move right up there, the D2, we just talked about it earlier, the Eastern Athletic Program. Eastern goes 9-1. They're 2 games better than Western and Northwest. And again, I love what Eastern has been able to do in terms of finding a home in a conference that fits them perfectly. You know as well as I do, as good as the volleyball team is, as good as the football team is, if they had to go year in, year out and go play the Wheelersburgs and the Valleys and the Medfords and not that they couldn't compete with them in their best years, but most years it would be an uphill battle.
Right.
They have been able to find a perfect home, and it's a good volleyball team. I've had a chance to see them on film a couple of times. I've watched them go toe to toe, and even in some matches they've lost in 4. I've seen them take some sets from some pretty good teams. So as they go in, they're a D6 team. We'll talk about here in a little bit. Um, really nice year there, and again 9-1. They're able to win the conference fairly comfortably by a couple matches.
Then the SOC three.
Of course, Wheelersburg. Not only do they go 10-0, they win it. I think they're 4 games clear of everybody. What happened here, John, was Waverly, South Webster, who we just did the other night. We were able to fall back and get that game there, which was a really good match. But then Valley's in there. What they did is they just start beating up on each other. So Wheelersburg runs the table. Then these teams start beating each other to death. Before you know it, Wheelersburg's like way up here, looking down there and comfortably. Obviously, all of those teams going some different directions in the postseason, which we'll talk about, which could be interesting opportunities for that conference.
Yeah, it should be an outstanding tournament for that conference as well. I was really glad to get to see that really good match the other night down at Waverly. So moving on to the SVC.
Yeah, of course, the Dean at the top, 14-0. They did have the one non-conference loss, so they just missed the opportunity to run the table just like Gallia Academy did. So what, 21-1.
Mm,
Um, outstanding, led by Katie Burns there in the middle, led by the staple of what's really been the staple of their program forever, which is their
mhm,
defense with Dalton and Smith back there, and obviously the incredible coaching with Coach Smith there and what they've been able to do. Jones has come on as a secondary hitter. Hard to find a weakness in there. I know I've picked a little bit, maybe at one of their rotations they can get stuck in, but that's me nitpicking. Um, Really, really good team. They're going to go to that D5 as the top seed there and be a real heavy favorite to make a run there as well. But congratulations. And then they had the 5-set thriller at Uniota
mhm,
that we had on.
mm,
I know they went 4 with Zane Trace a couple times, and um, it's exciting to see. I know Pike didn't even got them to
right.
4 there in that last one, but it's
And
exciting just to
then they
see.
took it out on him and let
Well,
us in.
I saw I wasn't gonna go
Yeah,
there. I mean, I was gonna give Piketon their due there because
right.
John has to drop
Yeah.
them. So Piketon, that's John's fault.
I didn't say the score.
Yeah. The but I think it was safe to say someone got their attention at the end.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, they at 14-0, they run the table again. And obviously that's one of a lot of SVC title, what, like 33 of them or something,
33, 17,
17
17
gold
gold
balls.
balls.
Yeah,
Yep.
wow.
So
Yeah.
unbelievable uh, program that they have in Frankfurt. Just every year, it feels like it's just a reload each year. Um, yeah. So moving on, TVC.
Yeah, TBC obviously goes Ohio and Hocking, bigger schools, smaller schools. Alexander, shout out to my cousin Lauren Hill. They win the TVC Ohio. We tried to go down there just to let the Alexander fans know. We tried to get down there. Unfortunately, in their tech department, they didn't quite think they were going to be able
Right.
to do it, which again we understand. So we pivoted over to Waverly South Webster. Carson Francis did a great job earlier in that
Mhm.
week down at Athens,
Yes.
covering the match against Athens that ended up clinching the share because Alexander and Athens had come into that Tuesday night match tied.
Mhm.
Athens wins the first set. Alexander comes back, wins the next 3. So they clinch the share. Then they had to come Thursday night on paper. It looked like, well, Vinton County's like 500. Well, Vinton County had knocked them off earlier in the year at Vinton County. And it's my understanding Vinton County's got a dynamic setter and a couple matchup things that caused some problems for Alexander.
Mhm.
Alexander obviously got that ironed out, played a really good match Thursday night, and they win. So they're your TVC Ohio champions.
Yeah.
And then over on the Hocking side, we remember we had the Racine Eastern Megs rematch on that
Mhm.
same night on
Yep.
Thursday. So there was a lot going on Thursday night, and Racine beats Eastern 3-0 after losing 3-1 back in
Mhm.
September over to Eastern. So Racine, I believe Racine might have lost just one non-league, so they're I don't have that in front of me. I believe they're going to put together like a 20-2 type
Mm.
season. So congratulations to Racine on their championship there. Both of those teams will obviously be factors in D7, which
Yeah.
we'll talk about here in just a second.
Maybe we'll see them again.
Mhm.
So, speaking of the tournament, so now I didn't miss anyone, right?
I don't think so.
It's
I'm
like
looking
just
down through here. SBC, OVC, TVC, MSL, FAC, SHAC, SOC, all yeah, we're good.
point for me.
Well done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially because I just forgot to like list it all to start. So, um, but now gonna jump into the tournament preview. So, gonna go division by division. First up, just an absolutely loaded, only 6 teams, but absolutely loaded, partial district in Division 3.
Yeah, in Division Three, I want to clarify something I said, John. I've been on record multiple times. I stand by it, but I want to clarify. I stand by that I do think I would rather be D3 this
Mhm.
year than D4. Now, understand that's just total excitement for Division 4. That's
Yes.
nothing against D3. Obviously, D3 has it has conference champions in it, so it's a really, really good bracket. But nonetheless, Uniota comes in at the top seed. Now, keep in mind, Uniota's only losses all year long have been to Adena twice and to Logan M.
Mhm.
So now they've also survived some 5-set thrillers with
Well,
a
what
Chillicothe,
Westfall finally got
with a
him this
South
past
Bend,
week.
um,
Yeah.
with the Westfall. So I mean, it's the situation of Miami Trace and Athens will play. By the time you listen to this, probably will play Monday night,
Yeah.
and we will have that quarterfinal at Uniota here on SOSA. So Dewey and I will be at Uniota Thursday night, the 16th. It's a 7 o'clock start, which you can pretty much bank on. We'll be on the air around 6:45
Yeah.
because obviously in the tournament, that's the
Yeah.
game, right? There's no other game. So we'll be over at Uniota. Make sure you tune in and watch that one. Should be a really good one because again, Miami Trace is a co-champion in the FAC, and
Mhm.
Athens was just a whisker away, as I just
Mhm.
described in the TVC
Mhm.
Ohio, from sharing that with or well, really winning it
Right.
from Alexander. So the winner of that one. Now Miami Trace was the four, so they'll host that one. There's another bus trip for you.
Yes. That
Athens,
is a
Miami
heck of a
Trace.
bus trip.
And then on Thursday night. So then on the other bracket, Chillicothe is going to play Monday night. Another long bus trip. Sheridan's coming all the way over to
Mhm.
Chillicothe. Chillicothe is able to survive that one, then they'll get a very talented Marietta, but they'll have to make the long bus trip over to Marietta in that one. And then semifinal moves over to Logan, and then as you said, because there's only 6 teams, they'll end up shipping our Southeast winner all the way over into the West Muskingum area and play an East team for the final.
Yeah, I'm sure you know who wouldn't mind that is Sheridan because they're not very far from they're not that far
Yeah.
from Zanesville. But yeah, that's a really dynamic Division Three. As we said, one, two, three, four, only five total games are going to be played in that Division Three, but all six of those teams play at a high level. So it should be really interesting to follow that. And as Shane said, we will have that match. The winner of Athens and Miami Trace, as you can see on our bottom line here, will play at Uniota on the live stream on Thursday night. So moving on to Division Four, we have what you said might be the most loaded division. Like if we're going like if we're ranking it, probably gonna be our number one ranking just because of the depth of Division Four. But what do you got on Division Four?
Well, I think it's both. I think you can make the argument that the top heavy talent is unrivaled throughout the entire Southeast, but then you're right, it also
Mhm.
has some depth coming all the way through it. If if seeds hold, let's just look at the top 5 teams. Okay, so Waverly uh, got the unfortunate slip to the 5 instead of getting the 4. So
Mhm.
Waverly's got to make the long trip to Warren. That's where they went a year ago. Now, obviously, both teams are a little bit different. Warren a year ago was starting a Final Four run.
Mhm.
Waverly was still probably a year away, which
Mhm.
ended up proving to be true
Right.
when you consider the year they had this year. Now Waverly goes back down the Warren, probably feels like they're far better prepared to go and compete.
Mhm.
And I think they will. Obviously, Warren still has plenty left over from a team that just went to the Final
Right.
Four. So there's a lot of dynamic in that matchup, but that 4-5 matchup should be a really good one. Again, that's Thursday night. Now, here's where we'll pick everything up. Assuming all the seeds hold, we're looking at a district semifinal on the 22nd at Logan. We'll have a doubleheader on SOSA for you on October 22nd, and we're looking at Circleville. We'll have the winner of that Warren Waverly. And again, this is it, assuming
Yeah.
everybody holds true on the, you can always have upsets. And then you'll have Gallia Academy against Logan Elm. So you're talking about four. If I was going to power rank the entire Southeast or our entire coverage area, I'd be hard pressed getting those 4 teams outside of our top five, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, certainly like Uradinas and Wheelersburgs
Mhm.
would fight for spots
Yeah.
in there, but obviously those are some really elite teams, and then we'll be back there on the 25th for the final, which obviously anybody that's in there will be outstanding. I felt like all year long that the ceiling of a Circleville, a ceiling of a Guy Academy is really high level volleyball. But you know as well as I do when a Claire King's involved and a Logan Elm team that's got about 7 or 8 seniors
Mhm.
on it. They're very capable. We watched how capable Waverly is. We know Warren's got the tradition of a year ago, and then Circleville might be the most talented team of all of them when they are playing at their peak. So should just be an unbelievable week of volleyball there on the D4 side. And we'll have it for you here on SOS on the October 22nd and 25th.
Yeah. Should be outstanding volleyball there for sure. So now moving on to probably our deepest. I mean, it's got the most teams, so we'll say deepest. Division Five.
Well, what's awesome for our area, this is the old Division 3 style.
Mhm.
What's awesome for our area, John, is how many opportunities it gives you. You know, in a lot of areas, when you have some elite teams, they would be beating up on each other in a sectional final or whatever you call it now,
Mhm.
in a semifinal
Yeah.
with it. And this gives us an opportunity to get three all the way out to the regional. I mean, what an
Mhm.
opportunity for our area just to constantly put teams on that stage. And the top seeds will be Adena, New Lex, and Wheelersburg. So that'll allow them to go opposite of each other and miss each other. But here's what happens when we talk about the depth of D5. I always say pay attention to the SVC year in, year out. They have proven to kind of set the standard in Southeast Ohio, and they're going to have a chance to mess this whole bracket up again. You know what I mean? Like when you look through here, we just called Chesapeake the other night. We've got a potential Chesapeake Southeastern semifinal. That could be a really interesting match for the right to play, most likely Adena. So again, could Southeastern get there and make it an all SVC district final? In that middle bracket, I think Python's a dangerous first round opponent for Oak Hill. Obviously, New Lex is going to be really, really good. Remember, I talked about North Adams earlier.
Mhm.
North Adams, Zane Trace will most likely be an October 21st matchup in the semifinal. What a big opportunity for North Adams just to try to move itself out into a district championship. Going to be really hard. Remember, Zane Trace was in the Sweet 16 a
Mhm.
year ago, and Zane Trace in the SVC. And then as you go down to the bottom, I thought Huntington would be a dangerous team, but I don't like their draw. They're going to end up
Mhm.
playing Wheelersburg in that second round. I highlighted Alexander. Here's Westfall. You just mentioned it, where they got Uniota in five.
Mhm.
Westfall, forget about the record. Westfall is a dangerous volleyball team. All year long, they've been able to stick their nose in against some really good teams. And if I was Alexander, I'd really, really make sure my eyeballs weren't peeking ahead to Wheelersburg there because Westfall coming out of the SVC is just going to be really dangerous. That's on the 22nd down there at Waverly. That'd be the second game that night. So SVC fans, you'd be able to see Wheelersburg, most likely Huntington, um, and then Alexander, most likely. Well, South Point's the higher seed, but again, I could see
Mhm.
Westfall coming out of that.
I can't believe that's only a 2-hour bus ride,
For what?
Westfall to South Point. Because as I said, Ripley, the Southwest to the Northwest, but now you got the Northwest to the South Point
Yeah.
of the state.
Well, and what's interesting about some of these bus trips too is the OVC. What a great opportunity for them to put themselves on the map a little bit because again, Chesapeake's going to get most likely an opportunity against Southeastern, and then South Point is the home team. They've got a chance to just knock Westfall
Yeah.
out. So I'm sitting here talking about Westfall could be Alexander South Point.
Mhm.
So that's an interesting thing. If all of those seeds hold, you're looking at like an Adena versus a Chesapeake or Southeastern in the final, a New Lex probably against like a Zane Trace or North Adams final, and then a Wheelersburg probably against like an Alexander. So I mean, you're talking about some really elite volleyball by the time you reach the final there. But now, because of the dates, we will not be at Waverly like we normally are because we are going to go to. We made the decision to go to that high
Mhm.
level D4.
Mhm.
But the other part of that decision is we get a chance to pick up three of these D5 teams as they go to the regional. So we'll be able to get a lot of coverage there still.
Well, hopefully somebody else pick up the slack because I mean we got some other good streaming services in the area, so hopefully they can pick that up uh, where we will not be there. I know we'll have lots of coverage there. Derek and Brock enjoy that's one of their big days as well. So also bunch of soccer that day, so I probably will not see any of it as well. So I'll be around there. So moving on to Division 6, to get two district titles out of Division 6 this season.
Yeah, and again, this is a great opportunity for the SOC. I talked about it earlier. I like South Webster. I know they've lost more times this year than we're accustomed to seeing them lose here in recent years. We talked about that on the air the other night about how I wouldn't panic too much when you start losing to Wheelersburg and Uniota and just really, really good teams all over the area. That's just part of it. You
Mhm.
kind of beat up on each other, but South Webster going to be more than battle tested and ready to go. I think they're a huge favorite to represent the Southeast as that Southeast 2
Mhm.
champion on the top bracket. And then at the bottoms where it gets all kinds of fun. Let's say Eastern comes out. You got Valley, Nelsonville, York, and then that Eastern Valley, that could be
Yeah.
a great opportunity for them to go toe to toe. And uh, looks like we're going to have two SOC teams from whatever division in the Division 6 district coming on out into the
There it is.
region.
Belpre at Lynchburg. Sorry that I'm just fascinated by these
Oh, the
travel times.
travel,
Yeah, Belpre at Lynchburg is
that's way out there. Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I don't know if good old route. If you get up there and you get over to Route 32, I don't know if that makes it a little closer than we think it is.
I think it must. 2 hours, 43 minutes on 32.
Really?
Yeah, almost all 32. Man, that
What
is
about Nelsonville, York, Ripley? Now you got me going on these trips, like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's the only issue with the more divisions is you go to the higher better seats, 2 hours and 22 minutes.
yeah. And
Yeah.
and a lot's been made of that, and it's not ideal. I don't know what
Yeah.
the answer is other than not play at home.
Right.
But like I guess it's part of, and again, if you could go back to, if you could get to a detailed way of seating to where it's a fair,
Mhm.
everybody knows how, instead of just some coaches on a computer saying, "Hey, I think these are the best
Mhm.
teams." Although I will say the volleyball coaches did a pretty good
Yeah.
job. My only problem sometimes I think you can go so far to the eye test. I said last week, the results still have to matter. You know
Right.
what I mean? You still have to win. Like even if you're really talented, but you lose, well, that has to still mean something.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, I completely agree. So, yeah, that'll be a really interesting Division 6. I do think, uh, we could see the Shack team get a nice run, but Paint Valley pushed Fairfield the first time, so that would be the most interesting 4-13
well,
matchup.
again, it goes back to SVC. Watch Paint Valley, watch Piketon in the first round. We see it every year.
Mm,
It, the SVC, their depth usually shows up. Like earlier this year, I've watched some fifth, sixth place teams go toe to toe with conference champions.
mhm,
You know what I mean? Like that one day, I watched Huntington at Huntington. They were playing Notre Dame. We just highlighted
mhm,
them as an SOC
mhm,
champion. Alexander just highlighted those guys at the
mhm,
TVC Ohio, and Huntington went toe to toe with both of them. I mean, it wasn't
mm,
like they were overwhelmed by both. I mean, they
right.
they competed with both of them on that. So it just gives you an idea about, the SVC is going to always come out and put a competitive product out there.
Yeah, it's been an outstanding volleyball conference for a long time, headed up by Adina as
Yeah.
always. But then moving on to Division 7. Now, last year I was able to get over to Southeastern to watch the Division 7 district finals, and they were high level volleyball, even being at Division 7. So, could we see that again this year?
You could, because I mean, Notre Dame will set the pace in the one seed, and you know, Western and Portsmouth Clay will most likely meet in that semifinal, and the winner will play Notre Dame in the final. So yeah, you have a potential anytime you play familiar opponents to go. We've highlighted some of the improvements in those programs. Down at the bottom, we just talked about the TVC hockey champion and Southern. Southern's a huge favorite to come on out to the district final. And if seeds hold, again, we're going to have round three of
Mhm.
Southern and uh, Eastern Reedsville. We'll get play best of three to see who
Yeah.
gets to go to the regional. You know, that we had back in September. Eastern, as I said earlier, 1-4, Racing the other night in straight sets. This one will be at Southeastern, the second of two Division 7 finals there on the 25th, and that would be the Southeast One district champion going out to the Sweet 16. So yeah, we're gonna have two solid volleyball teams representing us into the regional there for sure.
Yeah, should be an outstanding volleyball tournament for all the teams. So make sure you check out those teams. A lot of them starting Monday or Tuesday in the district quarterfinals or first round, depending on which
Yeah,
division it is. I wish there was something before quarterfinals that we could say. Just the
first round.
yeah, I know first round, but I mean,
Yeah.
just keep going with whatever finals.
Again, to make sure we're all on the same page, this Thursday night we start Division 3, Uniota against the winner of Athens, Miami Trace. Then we'll pick up the semifinal and final in that loaded Division 4. Then
Mm,
we'll pick up the Division 5 three district champions into the regional,
mm,
and that'll allow us to have the semifinal and then obviously one of them out to the
final.
final, and so we'll have that as well at Logan.
And
So we're gonna
hopefully,
get really comfortable there at Logan.
yeah, hopefully two. Hopefully two get to the
Yes.
final. So should be some outstanding volleyball as it typically is coming out of the Southeast District. So now we've been going for a pretty long time tonight. We've got a couple more topics that we want to make sure to cover because we had uh, league champions
Yeah.
crowned in cross country. It's the sport that probably pushes the furthest back out of the um, not football, but it takes the longest throughout the season to get through. But some really good cross country covered this weekend.
Well, I think as you get going into the tournament again, they feel like they can really only run it once a week.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like football and that where a lot of times you get into golf, you can go right into it. If you get into volleyball, you can play a couple a week. But yeah, in cross country, I have a few here, and if you have more, add them in there. I know on the OVC side, we highlighted Rock Hills, Nixon Stadium a
Yes.
couple times this year.
He's I saw he's got a couple of big visits coming up. He's got to be a high level runner at some of these big schools wanting him, and I'm guessing probably a high level student as well because that's a place where
Absolutely.
they can really help
No,
out.
that
Yeah,
that that's awesome because again, he's had quite a year. He wins and leads Rock Hill to the championship. They were 6 points better than Gallia Academy. Then on the girls' side, Marlena McCown of Ironton wins the individual, but Farrell and they run away there with the
but
girls' title.
6 points that's tight
That's not
because I mean really that can be a couple runners
yeah
apart. Just
yeah
so yeah, 6 points very tight.
not very far at all.
No.
And then had some sweeps. The SVC Uniota boys and girls sweep on the FAC Chillicothe sweeps, and all of them had the individual champion. I know Uniota boys, Caleb Kaplinger. Uniota was led on the girls' side. Cameron Walker, remember Walker and Vanessa Conley Bedina finished
It's
second. Has been really. I keep in mind they'll go opposite divisions. Also, Rachel Lude of Huntington will get to go to the smaller division. She was fourth in that race, so gives you an idea where they could stack up. Very, very possible that they could find themselves running with a chance to go on to the state,
mm,
um, um, or at least get to the regional with a chance to for
then
the state.
sweeps that on the boys side. They get the top 5 spots. I think they might have got the first like 9 spots.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's just
again, listen, cross country, a world of its own. I noticed over in the OVC, Fairland had like 17 runners.
yeah,
So if you look at those, don't get me started on my opinion on that. I'm not a
yeah.
cross country person. They choose whatever.
I just
I've asked
like
a couple of conferences if we'll be playing six in basketball at any time. They said no, but
yeah.
I mean,
That's
it's bizarre, and they
that's
count them.
yeah
Not on their team, but they count them like in the old league.
yeah. That's to me that's what's crazy. So usually you have 7 runners. You can have 7, 5 score. Why wouldn't you just have 7? Like I get that you want to. Like I get that those other kids they work super hard and I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
But like
It's just
you're
part of going to the
you
school you go to. I
yeah
mean, I
you're
assume Wheelersburg volleyball. Well, I know they do. Wheelersburg volleyball has an outside hitter on their JV team that would
well
hit outside for a lot of teams.
and we use baseball.
Yeah,
The 10th player works really hard.
yeah,
Probably not gonna make it in the starting
yeah,
lineup. Probably not gonna get at bats. Like
yeah,
it's just how it is. It's
yeah.
just and it's kind of crazy. We talked about this on SBC Sports Talk a long time ago, and it's it's awesome for those kids. It says a
Not
lot
saying
about
anything about
yeah
those kids at all.
no
This is more of just a bizarre, like you talked about 6 points. Um, not very much. What all of a sudden you start putting another high level 5 runners, 10 runners, 15 runners out there, and starts to kind of clog up the course a little bit.
yeah
That can impact. Not that they're counting still on the team score once you get past those top five,
yeah
but it still kind of can impact where you're getting in and out
mm,
of and different things.
it-
So yeah, it's just bizarre to me. Like I said, I know I've seen some things in golf over the years where certain kids will be on pace to maybe make all league, and then 3 4 weeks in they might not even make their own lineup. It's
right.
just part of it. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Because even in the like a lot of high school regular season, I've never been a big fan of playing six because again, I think they play five in the
right.
tournament. And I think it would add more parity to leagues. But at least in six, there's still a cap, and everybody runs the six if they want to, and it's
Yeah.
fun. So to go over that, I don't know. It's just bizarre, but I mean, it's just my opinion. I don't, like I said, I don't have a,
I ain't a runner,
yeah, I'm not a
so
runner and I'm not going to pretend to be, but I just know I'm in a I'm in a career that absolutely is based completely on rules and structure, we'd have
Mm,
chaos.
yeah.
And that's one that just leaves me scratching my head. I don't quite have an explanation for. So that's all I've
Yeah.
got. I know I'll mispronounce the young lady's name from Chillicothe, Gabby Marzana. Am I
I
saying that right?
believe that is
And then
actually
Jade and Beverly. Congratulations,
yeah.
Cavaliers. Sweep those there. Those are the conferences I have. I know we're missing all kinds of conferences. If you can, send us anything on those there. You try to go through, like you and I have talked about mile split before. Maybe that's where we need to like
Just
get
wish it
a side job for like a Kai Williams. Say, hey, like help us figure out
well,
who we want
he's
to.
shown me things before on, like, where to go on certain things, and it's like, I still have no idea. So, like, The Shack has the best website, and it's like, "Oh, here, go to this,
Yeah.
and this, and this," and it's like, well, it makes things difficult, if it's
Right.
kind of in all kinds of different spots. So, on the Shack, on the boys' side, Lynchburg wins. Kyler Fight from Lynchburg wins, and I believe it's Tavion Hughley. They finished within a second and a half of each other
Wow.
for first and second place. So that was on the boys' side. Over there, I'm not sure if I'll be able to find the girls, as it looks like it's going to be in a different spot completely. But yeah, congratulations to Lynchburg
Yeah.
on the Shack side as well. So, mile split, Bombs Page, I think Tri-State Runner, Tri-State Racer maybe might be the other place, and it's just like whenever I find it, I feel like I feel pretty good, and then the next like 5 meets won't be at that place. So, the state meets are typically at through mile split, so that's a
Yeah.
little easier to find on that. So, yeah, shout out to all those kids. It's one of the most difficult, things to do
Well,
is to
now's
yeah.
where it gets interesting, I know, in talking to cross-country coaches, because so much of those conference meets are, again, very predictable.
Yeah.
There's usually a team that's, you might get like on the one where you had the 6 point difference. That's kind of fun to watch,
Yeah.
probably, because to see who's in what place, and that's not normal. And
Mm.
most of the time, you kind of get a runaway, whatever. Now is where it gets fun because most people are trying to peak now. That they'll go to their separate divisions and they'll have an opportunity to really go out, and some are trying to go out and win district championships, go to regionals, go to state. Some are trying to get to the regional for the first time in so many years.
Mm.
So that's something we'll try to really follow.
Yeah, and one of the really cool things at the state cross country meet is they've got the big screens up, at, Fortress Obets, and they've got, like, an updated standings for the teams. So, the time I was there and covering it, I was like, "Okay, well, I can see where the team I'm covering
Yeah,
is going." And then, the team that I think was Marlington maybe, that just kinda came out of nowhere and won it, and they were, like, the 5th best team coming into it, and then they peaked at the exact right time, and I think they've
yeah.
been really good since then. But, yeah, cross country, so much respect to all of those that are involved in cross country across our area. And then our final topic is going to golf. It's the state tournament. I can't. Like you might be able to do it because you have the Wanamaker app that's behind a paywall. The state results behind a paywall, which is a great thing for our local area, or not just our area, but the entire state. Why have your state results behind a paywall? I'm not gonna have to. We're not gonna go into that. I don't want you to get in trouble. But speaking of getting in trouble, you're set up to go play 2 days at the state tournament.
Right.
Day one goes great. Day two, absolute downpour, just horrific weather, which we hadn't had, and really, you could probably ask a lot of people probably needed it, just for our area to, to get some extra liquid into the ground. Made the courses unplayable. I know the Division two boys went out and tried to play. They ended up not being able to finish. So I don't know if that was maybe it was going to clear up and the course was going to be completely different for the starting group and the ending group, or maybe it was just, hey, we're not going to be able to play. So both of those Division two boys and Division two girls just go based off of 1 day, which to me isn't the worst thing because you've played 1 day all the way up to it. Now you're set to play 2 days. Now I feel for the seniors that, maybe they didn't play their best on that first day, and you're like, okay, I still got one more day here at the state
Yeah.
tournament. I got one more um, round I can play, and then you're just not able to do it. Why is there not a rain date?
I guess
Yeah,
that's what I'm not sure of because,
'cause they weren't playing immediately.
right, you are
Yeah,
early too.
yeah.
Like we said before, golf is one of the earliest state and I understand some of these golf courses, they shut down and they have members and they have a lot of different things. There's a lot of money involved, and so I understand there's all kinds of logistics involved, I do.
Mhm.
Um, but 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 you just wish you could get because I do think over a 2-day stretch in golf, there's a reason the highest level of golf plays 4
4
days.
days, yeah.
I mean, when you play that second round, I do think you really separate and you
Mhm.
find and you're trying to, jockey. Um, we've talked about here before, the one that jumped out at me individually, Zella Latava from Zane Trace shot the 74, finished 7th in the state, so
Yep.
that's outstanding, and then you go on down,
I think Zane Trace was 7th and
yeah,
Piketon was 12th.
yeah, and Zane Trace had some kids in here. Anna Helber in 22nd place shot an 83, and then Mary Helber and Leva Kelly from Piketon tied at 28. So
So,
you had some local flavor in there representing quite well. That was fun to
mhm,
see, and and then obviously on the Westfall boys they had the nice
mhm.
finish. But again, just kind of a no pun intended, a little damper on it a little
Yeah.
bit. I'm sure the experience of going out and playing, and um, now the final one left will be coming up this week.
Yes.
They play at the North Star. I don't know if you're familiar with that course. That's a John Cook design, I think, and it's a private course and par 72, and it's long. Now they have like 5 or 6 tees up there, which all those golf
Yeah.
courses do, so they can set it up maybe a little bit more sensible for high school. But that's a really long golf course. So I mean, if they want to, they can really set that up to where the driver becomes almost a must. And then the problem there is it's so tight with so much trouble. You start hitting the driver, it brings all kinds of problems in play. If you start backing off 3 wood or iron, now you're hitting long iron 3 wood in the par fours all day, and that can open up problems. So it's a long golf course, but I know what Waterford is a
Yes.
team in action
They've
there.
they've been outstanding, so,
Um,
hopefully they'll play well, and then, I think we got the Division 1 coming up. I think it started today.
Now,
Um,
don't the young man from Huntington, didn't he qualify? I don't have
yes,
that in front of me. Didn't he
Tucker
qualify?
Taylor
Yeah.
also
So he
qualified,
he's going
so
to be playing up there at North Star as an
mhm.
individual. So that'll be quite an accomplishment there as
Yeah,
well.
we'll put a bow on our golf coverage next week on next week's overtime, which would be 76. So,
Okay.
um, yeah, so this is a long one. We
Yeah.
went pretty long today, but that's part of kind of wrapping up the end of the year. You're getting ready for tournament time for the playoffs. You want to get as much coverage as
I
possible.
think that's where the
Yeah.
timestamps help because you do want to cover each of the sports and with cross country golf, we're always trying to grow our coverage.
Mhm.
We obviously the coverage area is so incredibly long. You
Yes.
heard how long it would take us to go through our leagues.
Mhm.
Just sometimes needing a little bit more help but we'll continue to work on that a little bit for those sports.
Yeah, so should be outstanding this week. Week 9 should have some really outstanding games. As we said, we are going to be at Jackson at Miami Trace on Football Friday night for
Night before we'll be at Unioto
yeah,
Volleyball.
volleyball. The night before, the winner of Miami Trace and Athens will be at Uniota. That will be on Thursday night. Should be two outstanding contests. Uh, one with tournament lives on the line in a regional or a district uh, quarterfinal, and the other one with some playoff seeding implications, but also FAC title on the line
Well,
as
the
well.
winner would clinch the share, right? I mean,
Yes,
right off the bat, we know that. So
yes.
they'll clinch a share with a chance to play for the outright the following week,
Mhm.
and then as you said, just gobble up playoff points with a
Yep.
win in a game like
It
this.
would be a huge game for both teams as far as playoff points are concerned. And that's something, as we mentioned, joeidle.com, fantastic50.net. Check those out if you are interested in playoff points at all. OHSA is going to have all kinds of updates on golf, cross country, volleyball, soccer. We're going to be out, I think, maybe all 4 nights for me at either soccer or volleyball this week, and then kind of start things all over again. And Saturday night, actually, a kind of cool thing out at the VA. There's an indie ball showcase game that's going to be played at the VA. It's going to be guys from all around the country that are trying out to make indie baseball teams. Um, they're they're having their camp all week, and then they have a showcase game Saturday night. Your boy will be PA announcing. Hopefully, I get some of these guys' names right because those guys are coming. I know we got at least 2 guys from Seattle. Like, for instance, like, coming in and showing off their skills this week. So, I think next week or next year could be expanded even more, but, some really high level professional baseball gonna be played at the VA next Saturday night.
That's awesome, and it's exciting to see some of that in the off season there. And I was thinking about golf too. I know we have some of those FAC ladies and the Circleville
Yes.
ladies in there. I'll try to research even more on that a little bit and
Mm.
see if we can't if there's some things we need to go over because we won't have as much golf next
Yeah.
week. I'll try to really maybe have some things to highlight because I know a couple of those FAC kids and the young lady from Circleville were in
Mm.
action and probably very capable of competing up there at that level.
Yeah, so it should be, another outstanding week of the fall sports season. Next week, we'll have even more. I don't know if we're gonna go 2.5 hours next week, but, those of you who stuck with us, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um, as always, for Shane Combs, I'm John Bruce. You've been watching SOSA Overtime presented by Perfection One. Have a great rest of your week.